Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
To kill the enemy, she would have to capture his heart and podcast her own.
Oh, what are you replacing?
Break? I don't know. That's
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that sums it up.
I got another one. Here's the other tagline from the real poster. From the Academy Award-winning director of Podback Broadcast.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Have we started?
Yeah, we've started. You're
the earliest to have ever jumped in before
very
being
good job.
introduced.
Very early.
I
haven't
respect
been keeping
tradition.
Track. Yes, thank you.
A true blankie knows when to jump in, and it's ASAP.
I think we've been saying the name of this miniseries.
Podcastable. Thank you.
Yes, right. I don't even remember what the name of this miniseries is.
We've been getting it wrong because we picked a name, and then we told the great Pat Reynolds to do the artwork, and then I forgot what the name was, and I said the opposite thing of the artwork he had made. I think it's officially Podback Mountcast.
That is what it officially is.
But
yes.
I think I've been saying Broke Pod Mountcast almost every episode.
Right, we have. It doesn't matter. It's silly that we do this.
All of this?
No, well, yes. But especially...
Yeah.
Especially find these absurd names for our miniseries.
I did see on the Wikipedia entry, people were saying, it is yet to be seen if they will correct the name of the miniseries in later episodes.
Fans are on it, as always.
On the Blankopedia.
Blankopedia.
Yeah. You're going to have a blank check wiki entry now. That's pretty exciting.
Pretty excited about that.
I mean, you have a real wiki entry, but you could get a blank check one.
I'll be very proud of that. Sure. I think I've got a Wikipedia one.
Ooh, I bet you do.
That's big.
I think that we have to look up because we have spent a lot of time on Wikipedia. Yeah, of course you do.
I have not Wikipedia.
You're an American
myself.
screenwriter, director, producer, and actor, according to Wikipedia.
Actor, sure.
Hey, you were in some movies.
Yeah, I was in a couple.
Yeah. You've got some works of note: American Pie, About a Boy, Golden Compass. I'm introducing our guests, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The Twilight Saga, New Moon, Cinderella, linked. One citation, your IMDb profile. But there you go. You're on Wikipedia. Congratulations. No picture, though. You could add one.
Hey.
See, the thing I like about the blank check wikia, the fans, the listeners who fill them out, it's not just like regurgitating the info available somewhere else on the internet.
There's some flavor, yeah.
There's some flavor, and they write specific to your relationship to the show.
Sure, right.
And the things you've established within the episode.
And also, Richard Lawson asked to be, for there to be a, paragraph break. Richard Lawson is openly gay, period. Paragraph. You know how a Wikipedia entry will have that sort of dramatic announcement in the middle of personal life or whatever?
Yes.
So
he donated $30,000 to the John Kerry presidential.
See, I want a Wikipedia entry, and then I want one of those little announcements at top with an X-wing where it's this page is under construction or whatever, where there's the page is bad and they have to have a little picture of Yoda being page is bad.
Editor wars.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. A lot of controversy.
Which AT-AT it was that was destroyed in the battle of something or other. I should know these things.
You should know these things. You wrote an AT-AT battle.
Chris Weitz is our guest today.
Chris Weitz.
You wrote Rogue One.
I am one of the writers on Rogue One. Yes.
You were screenwriter on Rogue One. How...
Credit.
A Star Wars story.
Yeah.
How deeply did you have to go into Star Wars studying for that?
I was already pretty deep.
Yeah.
Here's my attitude. I'm an orthodox Star Wars fan. Which is all that matters to me is the first trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
By which I mean,
the Phantom Menace trilogy.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because the other things just happen later. I don't really care. What I care about is the young Anakin Skywalker and his fall from grace.
Right.
And those later movies, I heard they're not even finished yet. I heard he's still working on it.
And you know what? They just blow up another Death Star.
It's repetitive.
They blow up 2 more Death Stars. We already had Starkiller Base.
Repetitive.
Now I'm going backwards in time somehow.
You have your own order. You go 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
I've got a reverse machete. No, I mean, I thought it was going to be a kind of a nightmare of having to become the ultimate fanboy.
But you felt like that stuff was mostly at your fingertips.
I felt like what I really wanted was mostly at my fingertips, and then there was Pablo Hidalgo,
the famous,
who was there if I had questions. For instance, I had some important questions about kyber crystals.
Sure.
I forget what they were now, but
they're the things in the lightsabers.
They're
right?
the things in the lightsabers.
What they are.
Right.
Oh my god.
I
don't want people coming after me, man.
I'm
people
sorry.
are gonna like this.
Did you introduce Wills? Were you the one? Rogue One has Wills talk, and I was like, "That's the original George Lucas napkin scribbling that he like presents to Alan Ladd." And Alan Ladd's like, "Okay,
sure, sure."
You know?
I did. Yeah, that was me because I wanted to go deep.
Right.
I wanted it to be
That's what I
the
appreciate
sort
it.
of ultimate fan movie. In as much as everybody who's working on it, I think was a deep fan from back in the day. So yeah, that kind of stuff was important to me to get in, and I killed everybody. That is my.
Was that your big note?
That was your big
like
note.
they need to
That's
die.
awesome.
Was there a moment there? So there was a time when they were like, well, maybe we'll keep them around and they can have Rogue One too. Rogue Two.
Yeah, there was a time when it seemed
Rogue
as though
Ones?
nobody believed that Disney was going to let the heroes die.
Sure, right.
And I remember being in the meeting with Alan Horn, in which he said, "Well, I guess because of the thing, they've got to die."
Right.
And I didn't want to like fist pump at that
you
point,
want to like punch the air.
but it was an internal fist pump.
Yeah.
He gave you the permission, and you ran off and you killed them all.
I destroyed them.
Wow. That's one of the best things about Rogue One is you get to do all these wonderful dramatic deaths. I mean, it's
I'd
like
like to think it's justified by the situation.
Yeah. No, right. It would be weird if it was just like Final Destination and they had like increasingly comical, like they drop a space toaster in the space bath or what.
Lightsaber accident.
That would be interesting to see
Someone
one of those.
looking down the
Anytime you
barrel
see
of it.
someone use a lightsaber, exactly. You're like, how does no one like cut someone's arm off by mistake?
These things are dangerous.
Yeah. I do want to see, now that there's this question of like what the Star Wars stories are going to be, if they're even going to continue within the franchise. I want, like, instead of like, oh, let's do like sort of sidequel, prequel stuff. I want them to just go like, just pick a movie and remake it in the Star Wars universe and be like, it's Final Destination in Star Wars.
Sure. Right.
It's while you were sleeping in Star Wars.
Oh.
You just pick a good movie you
like that.
And you just go pick a couple.
You open on Dex's Diner.
Right. You do Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore with Dexter.
Yeah. Oh.
Like you pick a film you love and you go to
Mean
Pablo
Streets.
Hidalgo and he'll pick the species, he'll pick the ships that match up with the film.
Like she's like a lonely ticket taker on the Coruscant monorail.
Right, exactly. He's going, okay, Coruscant, and he would be a Poggle the Lesser. Let's put him in there.
Yeah, of course.
They
You
sort
got to
of
get
give you
Poggle
your
the Lesser in
ingredients.
there.
Yeah.
Oh man, do we ever meet Poggle the Greater, or is that it? It's just Poggle the Lesser.
Yeah, I think. I mean, my thought was always, is he not named? Is it not like, oh, he's Poggle Jr.? Is it that he has to work up to becoming Poggle the Greater? Is it Gandalf the Grey, Gandalf the White?
He doesn't have a twin
type
or
situation.
anything. Yeah.
He's also an Archduke, according to Wikipedia.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, you think he's good?
Poggle the Lesser.
I don't know. Isn't he like enslaved people?
No.
Like, stage gladiatorial, combat or whatever.
He didn't mean it.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, it's the time and place kind of thing.
He's the
Right. We have to respect the culture of his planet, the gladiatorial. Yeah.
But we can't erase history, okay? We can't say he was
Archduke
important.
Poggle.
Yeah.
Right.
He's the clicking sound bug
Yeah,
man,
he's the
right?
clicking dude who's
Right.
got kind of like a tendril beard.
Right, he's got a walking stick.
He's got a walking stick. He's a Geonosian.
And he was part of the Confederacy. Right?
Yeah, he's part of the whatever.
Space Confederacy.
Right, the bad people. Separatists, whatever they're called.
That was, I don't know if you don't want to talk about this.
Oh, what?
But
I don't know what it
you
is.
had your tweet before Rogue One came out.
Oh, God.
Oh, I think I wrote a take about
was like
that.
a nightmare for you, right?
Well, it was a nightmare for me. Apparently, it was a nightmare for parents everywhere who suddenly were really upset that in theory I said that they were Nazis, but because they bought Stormtrooper toys. I didn't know that what I had said. First of all, it was a joke, and like many jokes that one regrets on Twitter, not a very good one.
Yeah.
I remember it being fine. Look, I wrote a take about it. Look, a deleted tweet won't hurt Rogue One.
Wow.
Yes, okay, I've read that. I think that in the depths
See.
of my depression over that whole thing, I read that. But here's the thing: I actually hadn't even meant to say white supremacists. I think I'd meant to say human supremacists.
I think you did say human in parentheses, maybe.
Yeah, but I should have just said human.
You said right. They are white supremacist human
funny.
Organization. Right. Yeah.
But
you know what? Get out of this podcast. How dare you sully the good name of stormtroopers?
Hey, look, on this podcast, people never say things they regret. Least of all me.
People never read essays they regret.
That was a lesson in Twitter, I got to say.
Sure.
And that was the last time a film director tweeted something that got them in trouble with Disney.
It's good that people learned from that.
Time. Everyone learned from that.
Yeah.
No, but my question is, are you implying that their biggest concern was parents don't like thinking that the Stormtrooper action figures are Nazis?
Well, I got to say, actually, first of all, both Lucasfilm and Disney were not too incredibly fussed about it. That is to say, of course they were fussed about it. Right. And of course they do care what parents think and what fans think, but they weren't. They didn't like smash me with a giant mallet. But
they were
I think
like, hey, Chris.
Walt's favorite mallet remained on the wall.
Here's why I actually have regrets about that, not just in terms of sending a stupid tweet, but just generally speaking, is like yeah, it upset some parents. And, you can't always expect people to take things in the spirit in which they were intended.
Sure.
A. And B, let me see. It kind of like conceivably, I mean, the movie did really well, thank goodness, as far as that tweet is concerned. But I wouldn't want to damage the work of like a lot of people I like. So that's why I felt super dumb about it. As well as just having said something in the moments, thinking like, oh, this would be a funny thing to say.
But there was such a weird, there was an element of it, at least a sliver of the reaction to it, I found surprising, were the people who were acting as if you were applying politics to those characters that never existed before.
Right. That's the ridiculous thing.
The original Star Wars trilogy was
called Stormtroopers.
Hyper political.
Right.
And all that was intended.
I think all of that was intended. I mean, actually, I think George Lucas might have had the Vietnam War in mind.
That was his big touchstone. But there's so much sort of visual echoing of the Nazi Party.
Well, in the Force
Empire.
Awakens, it's the Nuremberg rallies.
Absolutely, right. That's like the introduction, the big introduction to General Hux.
Yeah, but I didn't mean to hurt anybody's feelings or get people freaked out. And I certainly didn't mean to receive, neo-Nazi hate messages either.
That sounds fun. That sounds like a fun experience to have.
It was interesting, I gotta say, because I feel like it was a sort of a canary in the coal mine experience for me. That like getting hate tweets,
right? Because that's pre-election too.
It was pre-election,
yeah, right? Where you're like, this isn't.
Maybe there's something going on here.
Storm clouds building. Yeah.
What's with all these frog avatars?
People like frogs all of a sudden.
I mean, I like a frog once. Cute to look at. I don't know.
So
I don't know why they're so into frogs.
This is, of course, our episode on Lust, Caution.
Lust, Caution. One of the great comma movies.
Yes,
I love a comma in a headline in a title.
This is Blank Check.
Yeah, we said that, didn't we?
I don't think we did. It's a podcast about directors, filmographies, filmmakers with massive success early on in their career. We're given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes projects. Poggles. Sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce. Baby.
I guess this is actually not a bouncer.
No.
Because it actually did really well in China. It just didn't make much money in America. Right. Yeah, it was a skimmer. Right. No one got hurt.
Skimmer's a good term. That's a good one to add to the lexicon.
Skim a check.
But this
is that why, when I deposit my rent check and it like my bank account goes to like $6 and it's like, yes.
Got it just in time. This does definitely feel like a blank check movie, though.
Sure.
I think people don't think about it as much as
because it wasn't that expensive, but still, yes, he's got his Oscar, and he's right.
They never would have let someone who didn't just win an Oscar make a movie like this at this budget.
It'd be one thing.
Do you know how much it cost?
It cost $15 million, and it was largely funded, I think, by Chinese and Taiwanese studios. But yeah, right, because it's not just that he's making a historical epic, and it's not just that he's making a foreign language film. It's also that it's like incredibly sexually explicit, like. All of that, like to secure a budget, that's an Oscar winner's decision.
Yes, the thing I was very surprised by was,
and it's hella long.
It's that's the other thing, very long.
Sure,
I had not seen this movie before.
Okay,
and I remember when it was coming out, reading reviews, seeing the trailers.
Yeah,
I don't know if I just misremembered everything or if I just had a false perception of this film, but I thought it was like 9.5 weeks. I thought this was like...
Yeah, that's true.
Oh,
I think
it was
that,
just like
from the reputation of the movie,
Yeah.
you just think it was like 2.5 hours straight
right.
sex.
Yeah, I guess they kind of doubled down on that in America with like, hey, it got an NC-17, so we might as well like lean on
I think that was their
like,
thing, like weaponize it because NC-17's always been such a kiss of death.
Which it was.
At least make it seem really sexy.
Sure, it is.
But it's
sort
like,
of.
the sex stuff in this movie is they go hard, but it's not
but
a
it's
very
also
large
very
percentage
tense.
of the film also.
But even also the sex scenes of these very tense power plays, they're not real.
Right.
It's not like 9.5 weeks where it's like
not
very
a sexy
titillating.
movie,
No, it's not.
I think so. I have a theory about this movie, which I could save for later, but I'm just going to roll out the
roll
preview
out.
of the
Okay.
theory,
Yeah.
which is that every once in a while, first of all, I think Ang Lee is one of the greatest living filmmakers. He's an amazing filmmaker.
Okay.
And Eat, Drink, Man, Woman is maybe one of my top 5 favorite films of all time. But every once in a while, he will sort of seem to discover something new and be like, yes, this one. And like with the Hulk, it's like CGI. This is I'm gonna use this. And I think with this one, it was like, fucking. It's like just gonna like I haven't done this before. Like all my other movies have been
It's
quite
true.
kind
He's
of
quite
demure,
restrained.
but
Yes,
in this one,
we're going all out,
going
baby.
for it. And when and it's also like with Billy Lynn's Long Half-Time
yeah.
Walk. It's like
With the
72
frame
frames
rate.
a second.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
be great.
Yeah.
And sometimes they bounce.
And when
baby.
sometimes they bounce, baby. When you hear about him, it is always also right. People around him might be like, are you sure about the camera? Like this frame rate thing's crazy. And he's like, no, it's going to be great. Like he's a very driven, like positive minded director in that sense.
The thing I keep hearing about him post Life of Pi is that he's like, I never want to do a 2D movie ever again.
Wow.
That like he got so into 3D because everything he set up after Life of Pi
That's
before
kind of a
Billy
bummer.
Lynn.
That kind of like depressed me hearing that.
Yeah, let's just work in 2Ds, man.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
enough Ds.
But Billy Lynn, that was his big thing, was like, I want to make a 3D drama. And he was like developing a couple things before Billy Lynn went, and all of them were 3D.
Wow.
Like he wanted to do a Muhammad Ali, George Foreman movie that was going to be in 3D.
I remember that.
And that got shut down because I think the budget was getting too high.
Sure.
There was like a
Boxing
bunch of
movies
stuff
don't really
like that.
play in the same way they used to. Yeah. Although Creed won't. But anyway.
He definitely does seem to, one of the reasons we picked him, why we think he's so interesting, is because there's just such a weird variety of stuff in his filmography. And I think it's because he constantly needs to find some new shiny toy, whether it's thematic or whether it's like genre or technological or whatever it is. I think that's very apt. He does seem really excited by the idea of sex in this movie. Not in like a horny way, but
also
like
100 hours of sex scenes were
That's
shot.
insane.
Like, or they shot for 100 hours. And like I read an interview with him where he was like, it was very punishing and difficult work. Like he doesn't talk about it like, it was really like fun to dig into this. He was like, it's very hard. We had to work very hard.
He doesn't seem like the kind of filmmaker who would enjoy directing sex scenes.
I mean, nothing in
think
his past filmography really suggests
I mean, every indication is that he's like a total gentleman and like not a kind of a James Cameron, like browbeater.
Sure.
And so, I mean, just to put the director's hat on, like to direct, I wouldn't want to direct sex scenes. And one of my worst experiences, just personally, as a director, was like a topless scene in American Pie.
I was about to say, like, I was sort of going through set, like, has he direct? But then you made American
You made like a totally like sex obsessed.
You broke onto the scene, like essentially like reinventing a genre.
But that kind of wasn't. I mean, that was like my brother and I weren't dying to do a sex comedy. It's just like you direct the first movie that you're allowed to. Yeah. And I mean, I really loved the script, and Adam Hurst did great work, and it was super fun, and it's probably the best time I've ever had making a movie. But that's not me. And like just my brother and I trying to direct like a topless scene is just so the saddest thing you can imagine. Like, okay, now you take off your clothes, and then because we're so embarrassed.
I think that's a thing that people who haven't spent time on set like don't understand is how embarrassing it is even to just do anything on camera.
Yeah,
right. So then you add on like, okay, any sort of emotional vulnerability gets really uncomfortable. Like anytime you're on set with like an emotional scene where someone's like crying, all the guys like holding the boom poles just look uncomfortable.
Yeah, of course.
They're like, I shouldn't be here. This feels like kind of private.
Right.
And like, God forbid, like, like nudity and stuff like that.
So
and then beyond that into like actually like replicating sex. Like the sex in this movie looks really like acrobatic.
Yeah,
like
it's very physical.
It's very physical,
right.
and like it doesn't. I mean, that's what's interesting about this, and feels like the thing that he kind of landed on was like, I want to make sex that actually looks like sex. Because watching the love scenes in this movie, you're like, oh, most sex in movies looks really fake.
Right.
Like it kind of underlines how bullshitty it is.
There's nothing kind of soft
right
core about this. Although I do think that like there's some really strange bodily contortions.
Yes.
They go for it.
That I don't know.
I've never considered before.
Particular one.
Yeah. When you got
like,
Tony Leung, you gotta
yeah.
fold him like a pretzel. I don't know.
But like, imagine having to direct that and being like, no, 15 degrees higher with the leg. No, the other leg.
I think he's like that because I remember speaking to Eric Bana once about shooting the Hulk, and you guys have pointed out that he's very intent on body language and sort of getting that right. But like the position of the head, the way that your head is tilted, like from 1 degree to the next, is very, very important.
Well, that's why the 100 hours thing kind of makes sense.
That makes sense, yes.
But then you also go, the movie's like 240.
Sure.
And I'd say there may be 5 minutes of sex scenes, 6.
Yeah, certainly it's mostly not sex scenes.
Right.
That is true.
Right. It's not even like, I mean, it's a little bit like Blue is the Warmest Color.
Those sex scenes are very long, though.
But there's kind of like the one big section.
Yeah,
in the middle
you're right.
You're
right. And then it's a lot more just emotional,
right?
Dating content.
Right. But this is kind of
if you were
similar.
like a 13-year-old kid watching this on HBO in the old days,
right?
You'd be like, you'd be waiting it out a lot. You'd learn a lot about Shanghai in the early 40s.
I guess there was a Japanese puppet government. I had no idea. Right? Yeah.
This is one of those movies that would have like identified cinephiles at a young age, because all the 13-year-old boys would stay up to watch it, and then like one out of every like 1,000 would go like, wait a second, but the camera angles are really interesting.
It's really building very slowly, to like an emotional climax.
I'm not seeing butts, but the mise en scène is incredible. But that's the part where this movie gets so blank checky, is that like with this script and this story, right? You could have seen them go like, so do you think you could get it in a PG-13 if we're clever about how we do the sex scenes?
Right.
Like this movie doesn't even necessarily need to be R.
Right, but to him that was like, paramount importance.
100% if we're going to do it, the sex scenes have to be visceral.
I guarantee you that there were heated discussions between the MPAA and the studio where it's like, well, what if we took some thrusts out? Now, not that shot.
It is interesting how thrust. Yeah, you read about that. They're like 2 thrusts, not 5.
Yeah,
and then you shall have your R.
We had I think we cut 2 pie thrusts as the last thing to get down to R on American Pie. It got that bizarre.
And there were multiple pie situations, right? Like I remember there was like a harder pie edit.
There's a more or less caution kind of pie version we didn't use. But by the way, while we're having fun here, I want to say also the sex is problematic in this. I want to be the first to use that word ahead of anybody else, because actually I was kind of distressed at the sexual politics of
it's a little horrifying.
I don't think it ages well.
I mean, it's more horrifying that that this becomes an emotional relationship.
That's the thing for me.
But I don't think that's unintentional. Unfortunately, not unfortunately. But I do think that's part of the larger point he's making. It's not like this is not a love story exactly.
No.
Well, it's a very complicated affair they're having.
What it reminded me of was that is it in Annie Hall? I forget which, but there's some scene where it's like a Hollywood party and a guy saying like it's a movie about a guy who screws so good, and Woody Allen goes, "Screws so good? What are you talking about?" And it sort of felt like that. Like there was this kind of thing that I don't buy about it, where it's like, yeah, she's getting swept up in a web of sensuality, and it doesn't really matter that the guy's clearly sadistic and frankly,
no, what were you gonna say?
He's evil.
Yeah, I agree. Yes. Well, certainly. By the end of the film, that's crystal clear. But the arc kind of goes that at the beginning, not to jump into like the meat of the movie, but at the beginning, the sex is purely like violent and terrifying, and it is fully abusive with no gray area.
Yeah.
And there's the point where it starts to feel a little bit more slightly, consensual.
Sure. And he's softening slightly also outside of the bedroom anyway, like, with the ring and all that. Yeah.
Right, but that's also tied to the fact that she seems to be enjoying it more.
Sure.
So you're saying that the complication comes from the fact that it's like she starts falling for this evil guy once the sex becomes enjoyable.
Yeah, and I'm not buying what they're selling, I gotta say.
Yeah.
This is sort of a trope that I think Game of Thrones got in trouble with before,
Sure.
but because it's so fanboy intensive, they were like, what are you gonna do? It's like where Daenerys is raped at the beginning by Jason Momoa guy.
Yes, Aquaman himself.
Yeah.
Yes. She marries Aquaman,
and then
King
she
of the Sea.
eventually loves him, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know
It
about
is-
the
It's funny 'cause-
viability of
Yeah.
that as a...
In the book, that's also not how it goes, which is interesting that the TV series dials it up.
That she loves him eventually.
No,
Or
that he rapes her. That doesn't happen in the book.
really?
Their first sexual encounter,
insane.
he first sort of tries to kind of like mount her or whatever, and she sort of turns him around.
She's like, oh no, let me show you
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
sophisticated
and-
new way.
Right,
to
so the
have
bond
sex,
is
right?
much quicker and not as like.
Got it.
And I think the TV show is like, we need to like push the brutality of this because like we want it to feel like she is really like stuck in this horrible situation.
man.
But
It's
that's a
just
mistake
like
Game of Thrones makes over and over again.
As a trope, this sort of the journey from kind of abusive sex to obsessive
Yes.
love is like I just don't. And I think so. Probably you would go into this movie thinking like Tony Leung is fucking so incredibly charismatic
Charming guy.
that you
Yeah.
can understand it.
It's
Right.
fascinating that he cast him in this role that is so inhuman and evil. Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
he is one of the most charming actors alive
Yeah.
and one of the most handsome actors alive.
No, I have that thing too. Like I have such problems with 50 Shades of Grey. And
I've not seen those.
I
but
try to engage with it a little bit just because it feels like enough of a cultural thing that I
Mhm,
want to
mhm.
know what it is. And I'm constantly checking myself and going like, is this my puritanical whatever? Is
Right.
this me being a guy? Like, where's my hang up here? But there is something about the fact that the relationship does feel straight up abusive to me.
Mhm.
It doesn't.
I think that's because 50 Shades of Grey is poorly written. Like,
Yeah,
I do
I think
like
that's the
not to be
problem.
mean, but I do think like to 50 Shades. I mean, but
Yeah.
like I do think the core problem there is that Mr. Grey or whatever, like they're trying to be like the movie is not actually about a guy who is like very into BDSM. It's about like a very damaged man, right? Because like
Right.
she's always like finding like trauma in his childhood, and like that's like the crux of every movie where it's like, oh, it turns out this. And so the movie's like, and that's why he does this stuff. And then you're like, oh, so he's just like a traumatized person who does abusive things rather than like, oh, he likes to have a contract that you sign and you negotiate and whatever.
and also that it's poorly written in a way where the character's behavior is totally inconsistent.
What also doesn't make any sense.
No.
And like she works in a
Also,
hardware
it-
store. I don't understand any of
Seems
this
like it's
stuff.
all dressed up with like a lot of money and
Yes.
Jamie Dornan being sexy,
Right,
right? So
right,
if it
and the
were sort of-
apartment and the private
Yeah.
planes. It's also, I mean, can I call bullshit on a major aspect of this franchise?
The shades?
There's only one shade of gray.
Wait a second. She works in the paint store. Multiple shades.
I don't know about that.
Doesn't she work at like a hardware store in the first
Yes,
one?
she does.
Yeah.
Because he comes by to buy rope. This is how I spent my birthday. I went to see 50 Shades of Grey on my birthday.
Like the first one?
Yeah.
That could be
I saw it in
downer, right?
IMAX.
That'd be
It was
really
a
You saw it in
downer.
IMAX?
Saw it
Did
in
you see it on
IMAX.
your own?
Like, was
No, I
it?
saw it with like 4 people.
What? Were you like
The wrong
excited to
number
do
of people.
this?
I was just like, fuck it.
you were.
Doing 50
Wait,
Shades
is
in
Pacino awake
Yeah.
again?
Like we're all gonna die.
That's what it kind of felt like. That's what it kind of felt like. Yeah.
Wait, I want to pull back.
Sure.
back.
Okay.
We're talking about less caution.
Correct.
Sorry.
Chris, for some insane reason, you like our podcast. That we can get into that if we want to. I mean, I don't.
You had tweet. We didn't know you were listening, and then you tweeted about the Starship Troopers episode.
Indeed. Yeah, and I said that it reminded me that that's a work of genius. Actually,
It's a great movie.
That's great.
and here's the thing: is that I love your podcast because, amongst other reasons, there is a genuine enthusiasm for film, and I have been having this kind of crisis of meaning with films, and it made
Sounds
me
like
want
you
to
might work in
reapproach
Hollywood.
things. Yeah. Well, it's like, man, they're really hard to make, and even
Sure.
bad films are hard to make. And I don't know. So from time to time, you think like, and also if you make them, you can no longer really watch them in the same way. I'm sure you experienced
Yeah,
this too,
it's a
Griffin, where
bummer.
it's like, this shot, that shot, oh,
Sure.
must have been hard. Look at that extra doing that. And so I've started to go a bit crazy on the question of like why films, and this sort of started to renew my faith.
That's the highest praise we could possibly get.
Yeah.
But so then we're chatting and you're saying, well, I'm going to be in town, and we're like, sort of looking at our schedule. Griffin and I are conferring. We're like, oh, there's not a lot of like stuff we don't have like a guest already expressed interest in. How do you feel about Lust Caution?
Like Hail Mary pass.
And you responded with, you've used the score as your temp track or temp score.
Temped the hell out of that score.
Which I did not expect you to say.
No.
Well, I think Alexandre Desplat.
Yes. He is my homie. We've done four movies together now because we just finished working on the fourth movie. And
was it Golden Compass when you guys first
Golden Compass was the first one.
Yes.
Then
that's a good score.
The Twilight Saga: New Moon, and then A Better Life, and now we just did Operation Finale, so I love his stuff. Needless to say, and I think he is fantastic. And I actually think Lust Caution is it might be my favorite.
It's an underrated score. I feel like he's
amazing,
and he's the kind of composer. He works in such bulk. Like he'll have like 6 scores a year, and you don't know how he does it. So it can be hard to sort of like find the gems sometimes.
I think, his underappreciated ones, because people know the ones that sort of got Oscars and whatnot. To me, Lust Caution, Painted Veil is pretty.
Painted Veil is a great score. Good movie, great score.
Yeah, but Lust Caution, I think actually, not having, because I hadn't seen, I agreed to this podcast before having seen the film
off of the temp connection.
Right.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't think that it is cut particularly well into the movie. That is to say, I don't think it gets its day in court. In the way that,
it is
like, if you're
understated in the movie.
If you're doing temp, you get to hear the whole track, and then you're like, oh, we're going to use this bit here, and you hear it over and over and over again. So these themes are really in my mind, and there's these beautiful, lush melodies.
So, did you know that he's your friend, your collaborator? Do you go, well, let me pick another one of his scores so I have something to cut to? Is that how you landed on that one?
Well, when you're temping during editing, obviously, the scoring's going to come much later, and sometimes maybe you have sort of shitty synthesized versions of what you might use down the line. But mostly, so you're trying to get what suits the movie, but also to avoid temp lock, which is like when you fall in love with something that you've put in. And ideally you're temping with the work of the composer that you're.
That makes sense.
So because then they're not thrown, because they're also hearing the temp. Actually, Alexandre, I think, said to me that he would rather not have any temp music at all in the movie that he sees, but that isn't possible for me to do. I need to think
or else it just doesn't make, like, the movie just doesn't seem like a movie.
I mean, some sequences are like only supported by music. I mean, like certain kinds of montage pieces or certain kinds of shots are going to have music, and so I think sometimes maybe we send Alexandre a version without music, but at least he's familiar with what he was going for at a point in the past.
Right. I was so you said that, I went, oh man, what a funny coincidence. Then I watched this movie last night, and I realized the score for this movie is what my old acting teacher used to use in class.
Wow, to like hype you up?
To like lock us in, to like go deep. Like she would like play this track and then like guide us through her thing where everyone would think about their mother and start crying.
Wow.
So I have this almost
weird.
like
you
Pavlovian,
do a very strange thing. I just want to point this out.
The weirdest
fucking
thing that makes no sense.
Right, yeah.
And this is Elizabeth Kemp, who passed away last year, who I've talked about, was like the one acting teacher I
the one Ellen Burstyn hooked you up with and then
correct, told me to try silence. Right? Yeah. But she was like a very hippy dippy lady who did all this stuff that when it was described to me, I was like, I don't want to fucking do that.
No.
And then I was like,
what you just described to me sounds like my worst nightmare.
It was truly like yoga mat in the floor of a church in Harlem where she like played the Lust Caution score and talked about a green light going into your heart and thinking about your parents. And I was like, this is so dumb. And then 90 seconds later, I was bawling. And then I gave the best performance of my life.
I kind of like that. I would like to do that part. I wouldn't like to do stuff in front of other people. Like,
this
seems like more like the meditation class kind of.
Yeah. Privately, I think it might be a rewarding experience. Doing that in front of another person is, I would literally like wake up in a cold sweat that would be a nightmare.
Well, that part of it was everyone lying on the floor with their eyes closed.
Sure, okay.
So you had the like, self-awareness.
And you're just silently crying.
Right, there's the self-consciousness of knowing you're around other people. But the thing I liked about that class was it wasn't like, okay, and we prepared this scene and we're going to perform it for you.
Right.
Like a lot of it was the meditative stuff and the just sort of getting out of your head, getting out of your sort of physical tension sort of stuff. And then like at the end, people would come up and do what they were working on, but she didn't let people do like the material by and large.
Huh.
So what actors do is amazing. I got to say, and
It's so stupid.
It's really strange. I mean, I suppose you could look at it stupid. Like if you look at look at it from one angle, yes, it's stupid. At another angle, it's like this weird ritual of like channeling. Voices.
I like love doing it, and I love watching it, and I feel dumb all the time. If that makes any sense,
Right?
Sure.
Like it just feels like such a weird like. I can't be doing this right. Because the thing that's so strange about it is like whatever anyone tells you doesn't really matter because you have to figure out how you work.
Mm-hmm.
Like your brain doesn't make sense to anyone else. Your body doesn't make sense to anyone else. You have to figure out your voice and all that sort of stuff. I liked her a lot as a teacher because she would just play less caution and let people tap into their own thing.
Right.
Without being like, this is the way you do it. But I know Valerie Curry, who past and future guest,
yes.
Plays my sister on the show. We were talking about all the tricks we have to use when we're doing like crying scenes.
Uh-huh.
And something like the tick, we work on like a TV schedule. So we
You
have to
cry
do
right now.
Yeah. And it's like, it's sudden. Oh, we changed the scene order. We're doing this now. We have to do like, 7 or 8 pages a day. And sometimes it's like a bunch of stunt stuff and then a comedy scene and then like an emotional scene.
Right.
And it's literally just the stuff of like, oh, I have a crying scene coming out. Okay, let me find the biggest light on set and just stare into it for 3 minutes until they call
That's
action.
how he went blind.
Right. So that just the second I start, I'm teary-eyed and hopefully I can run from there or whatever
in theory,
it
you're
is.
priming the pump. I mean, it's not just fakery, right? Because you're trying to access, like once you start crying, the emotions presumably follow sometimes.
Right, but it's a combination of things. Like sometimes you just think about what the scene is and that gets you there. Sometimes you're like, oh, fuck, I got to think about my dad. Sometimes it's like physically punishing yourself.
Yeah, damn it.
Whatever it is, but it's like you're just...
Again, very strange.
So weird. So weird.
Yeah.
But
And
you
it's
can
like,
understand why many actors are kind of cuckoo. Because they have to do these things.
Yeah.
They suddenly have to do this emotional sprint. And then it's like, okay, thanks. Now we're going to reset the lights.
Right.
I mean, I do sympathize.
It's so bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have done a little bit of acting, so I feel like you have that sort of knowledge of at least knowing how weird it feels.
Only
to be
enough
in that
to
position.
know how weird and uncomfortable it is.
Which I think makes a big difference. Like with the people I've worked with, the ones who just are like, I've done that for 5 seconds and I hated it.
Right.
I get it.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I feel a lot more secure. But something like, not to bring things right back on topic, but like I look at the sex scenes in Lux Caution and I go like, how could you ever feel comfortable doing that?
Right. Maybe that's the 100 hours is like for 2 hours, it was deeply
You gotta get past
uncomfortable.
that. Right.
And then like about 3 hours in, they're sweaty, they're angry, and then you get there you are.
Yeah.
Sure.
But but even so, like even on a closed set, you've still got a bunch of people watching you doing technical things while you're supposed to be, doing.
And then getting notes on that is just like, people going to go like, hey, look, it's actually better for sound if you don't hit his back.
Yeah, it's like when you bite his nose.
Yeah, if you could just angle out a little bit, because otherwise we're getting shadow.
There's this Michael Douglas quote I bring up. I think I brought it up on the podcast before, where he says like it's the worst thing to do because everyone watching has probably had sex and like is like thinking like this is bullshit.
Yeah.
And he says like dying is his favorite thing to do because no one has ever died. So they're not going to be like, he's dying wrong. Yeah. Like, and that's it. Just, I read that quote and I was like, you've done so many. So like he is like, Michael Douglas is like the sexiest actor there is.
Yeah. Well, and it also is like, he was doing the most like over-cranked,
the most intense 80s, like Fatal
scenes.
Attraction, Basic Instinct.
But then you think about like those things are all about like the angles and the editing rhythms. And if you're actually looking at it like as a person on set and they're both wearing like flesh-colored underwear.
Very strange.
And they're like trying to make it look right on camera, it would look so unlike human sex.
Right.
Yeah.
That's like a thing in this movie is it's like a lot of full body shots.
Yeah, that's true.
For me, what like makes it kind of startling is that the actual awkwardness of their bodies together. that because you're not just getting like clipped angles.
Yeah, they're not just looking for beautiful pictures. There's sort of,
it's like the herky-jerky movements feel, you know.
And this is a man who can make beautiful pictures.
He can.
Yeah.
So this movie, I started up and immediately go like, oh, I guess I have no idea what the fuck this is. Whatever notion I had of what this movie was, I guess, is 100% wrong.
I saw this, like, why are all these people talking?
Yeah, it's like 10 minutes of mahjong at the beginning.
Yeah, that's true. This movie that's the most angry thing about this movie.
Yeah, the mahjong.
Scenes of intense mahjong.
Say, when I was watching it, I was like, I wish I understood the rules of mahjong because
oh my God, that would be so much better.
It seems like there's a lot going on. Like there's that thing where she gets the red tile and everyone's like, whoa! And I'm like, is that big a deal?
Is this like Casino Royale? Would I be on the edge of my seat if I knew?
But yes, no, that felt like Ang Lee's like favorite thing is those charged mahjong scenes where it's all chit chat and all small talk among the ladies,
the wives who really kind of secretly hold the power,
right? And Joan Chen holding court, like that's some good shit.
That stuff is great. Actually, I do like the mahjong scene.
You know what? It should have been all mahjong.
It's actually in some ways it's a very old fashioned movie because it starts in this kind of thing, and there's like 4 years earlier,
right?
And it feels very traditional in that regard.
It feels very 40s to me. I was going to say that media res opening feels very like 40s, 50s Hollywood.
And then you're in Let's Put On a Show. You know, it's like, Little Rascals all of a sudden where they're like, oh, here we are in Hong Kong. Let's all... Actually, there's a brief interlude, right, where they're on the road somewhere in China. Yeah. And we know that they're refugees heading to Hong Kong. They're going to university in Hong Kong.
The Sino-Japanese War, so it's like, Japan and China China's still this like very unstable place. Hong Kong is like one of the bargaining chips, almost like one of these sort of colonial outposts that's different from the mainland China.
But that's the thing.
He's casting all these Hong Kong actors.
Yes.
So carry on.
No, that's the thing that feels very classical to me is like a trope that's still used today, storytelling wise, is the start at media res with a crazy, crazy situation.
Right.
And then I bet you're wondering how I got myself into this situation. Mm-hmm. A thing that feels very 40s, 50s Hollywood is start with something that seems kind of innocuous, live in it for a period of time, and then jump back. So the first 10 minutes, you're just like, I don't know.
Yeah, the first 10 minutes is mahjong and then like a phone call and you're like, there's Mr. Yi and what's going on?
But Tony Leung shows up and you're like, is this the meeting? Have they already met? Like it's a little like the Carol opening.
Sure. Yes, that's right. I forgot Carol has that opening, right? And that's barely in media res. It's basically in end res. Right. Like,
But then when the film cuts 4 years earlier, things are more dramatic.
Yes.
Like it's not like they're going back to a simpler time.
Yeah. I wonder if you need the beginning. I mean, so I saw this film in theaters in 2007 and then had not seen it since. Mm-hmm. And when this movie started, I was like watching and I'm like, I swear there's all this stuff with the students. Like I like checking the Wikipedia, be like, wait a sec, and then realized I forgot about this sort of opening.
It's kind of like one of those editorial choices you make where you're like, well, what if we sort of framed it with the scene that they come to later? But usually when you frame it that way, there's like something, like you said, something like exciting.
Right.
Like, holy shit.
Right.
Because we're going to foreground all the action to show, but instead they foreground the mahjong. You know, and you're like, we got to get some mahjong in earlier. Otherwise, how are people going to know? That's the strength of our movie.
Yeah. They had to lead. I mean, the big selling point of this movie was tits and mahjong.
Those should have been called
things.
Less Mahjong.
Less Mahjong.
All right. So we've got this university student played by Tang Wei. Mm-hmm. And this movie stars the 2 stars of Black Hat, right?
I do know that.
Yeah,
and there's siblings in Black Hat.
That's right. They are. Right. Because she's Chris Hemsworth's love interest in Black Hat.
Have you seen Black Hat?
I've not seen Black Hat.
Big fan.
Black Hat's good. Try to track down that director's cut that has only played on FX, though.
Yeah, I still haven't seen that. I only saw it theatrically.
Okay. It's crazy. He moves a major plot event like an hour earlier in the movie, and then suddenly the movie makes sense.
Like that movie's the opposite of that, where he took a thing that's supposed to happen at the end of Act 2 and made it the cold open.
Yeah.
But just changed the chronology of the event.
Like nothing else is.
Oh, I mean, it was not a flash.
It's not a flashback, so the movie doesn't totally make sense.
Yeah, and then he puts it. He puts it where it belongs.
Here it is.
Right?
Anyway,
and then suddenly it makes sense.
Yeah,
he's a weird guy.
I mean, look, Chris, take it from us. You got to wear that hat,
Chris. You should go on the DJ podcast and be interviewed by Michael Mann, because that is the most incredible thing in my entire life. Is the episode where he interviews Ridley Scott.
Oh yeah,
and he's just like, well, rich people are really interesting. And Ridley Scott's like, was there a question? And he's like, I don't know. Like it's like that for an hour.
Yeah, it's every time Michael Mann takes the mic, it's 8 minutes and it doesn't end with a question mark. It ends with him going, I guess there isn't a question here. I just wanted to say I thought it was well made.
Doesn't care to, he will happily roast
he's not gonna
Michael
dig him
Mann.
out of that.
No, he'll be like, what? I mean, Ridley Scott is also gravel voice. I'm making him sound.
That's like the gravel cast.
Yeah. It was I was like, I could listen to these two talk every week just about like their haircuts or like, the Ravens or whatever. I don't know, any old crap.
I think Tong Wei was fantastic.
I think
she is so good in this movie.
Yeah.
She was, I'm looking like she was unknown. Like, this is her first role.
And it was a hyped thing of like, Ang Lee picked her. This
She's
is
been
his
in like some
follow-up to
TV shows, I
Brokeback.
think.
She's going to be a big deal. She makes this movie. She gets
She's blacklisted by the Chinese film industry.
yes. For like 4 years.
Oh, was she?
Yeah,
Because of the
100%
sexual
blacklisted.
content.
Yeah, she's back now though, and she is actually pretty big. She actually had a rebound, but yeah, she was basically, I think, given. It's almost like sports. She was like given like a 2-year ban. Like it was like we just can't make
For
movies with you
steroids, as it
because
were.
because you made this explicit movie. Like how shocking. Tony Leung, no ban, but
No, of course not.
But he is not from mainland China. He works in the Hong Kong industry, which is more, loosey
Also,
goosey.
come on, he's a guy.
He's a guy. I mean,
What's he gonna do? He also is and was a pop star, right? Tony Leung? Am I mistaken? He has a music career as well.
Yeah, he's done music. I don't think of him as like
Was he an actor first? And that because Lee Hom Wang, who plays Johnny,
he's like a big pop star. Who's
Johnny
the
Square
other
Jaw,
half of the
yes.
Black
Right.
Hat siblings?
yes,
I'm trying to think.
is a pop star.
Yes, he's like a pop star first. Tony, I know he had boyish looks.
Did Tony Leung just do like a crooner album or two based upon?
Like he might have pulled a Downey Jr.
Yeah,
He was named one of TVB. TVB is a television channel. One of TVB's 5 Tigers, aka the 5 hot young stars in the 80s, along with Andy Lau and Felix Wong, like these other. And then he was in something called Police Cadet, which sounds good. Played a lot of policemen. But he's done some singing.
I do feel like that's a thing in China that every movie star needs to have at least one album.
Yeah.
That I kind of wish was enforced here in the States.
Also very old fashioned, I think.
Very
The only
old.
people who are doing it
this sort of
is-
like triple threat kind
Disney,
of idea.
Disney Channel kind of does that.
Right.
Where they're like singing, dancing, acting.
But
Right.
it would kind of be nice if it happened with adult actors.
Yes.
If they like forced
I can
Paul
imagine
Giamatti
that
to do
now.
an album every time he did a movie.
But
Joe
like,
Pesci has an album.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Joe Pesci discovered Frankie Valli, right? Wasn't
Yes.
he their manager?
Yes.
Someone plays Joe Pesci in Jersey Boys, which
That
is
is
the
correct.
weirdest thing.
right. Yeah. Joe Pesci was like just a guy who worked in like the Jersey club scene, and then
Right.
like Scorsese like
He was like a
likes him.
bouncer. Yeah.
Yeah.
He put out a rap album though.
He did. That's true. That was it was more in the Home Alone era, right?
Yep.
So you think every star should also have to do a novelty rap album?
Correct.
For Tony Leung, I feel like this is a shocking role for him though, because he's like the like handsome
matinee
leading man
idol.
of Hong Kong cinema. He he'll play cuties, he'll play love interests, he'll play like heroic cops. But like this is like such a villainous role.
It's like
such
casting
a nasty
Tom
role.
Hanks in this type of role.
It is.
Yeah.
God.
Something interesting
Imagine
about this, though, is like, eventually these kids are putting on a show, decide to become spies and assassinate the Tony Leung character, who is a collaborator.
Right. I love that, though, that they get into revolutionary
Theater.
the movement through the revolutionary theater, right?
And
The
people see how
nationalist
taken
theater.
everyone is by her like
She's a great
political
performer.
speeches
Right.
that they go like, we got to weaponize this and we got to use it.
Yeah. But the interesting thing to me is that the only murder on camera that you see is done by the people who we sympathize with.
Yes.
And we're
It's
like, "Oh,
incredibly
sweet guys,
brutal.
Holy crap, they're stabbing this guy
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
death. Whereas Tony Leung, we know is doing terrible things, but only describes them.
Yes.
As facto. And he describes the most horrific things.
Yeah, he does.
But I wondered what was the reasoning behind that, and perhaps it's to sort of give to give a visceral sense of violence, but also that Tony Leung somehow is immune from it in terms of how we're supposed to regard him.
It's so much of his power is wrapped up in his sort of like how well dressed he is, how
demeanor.
sophisticated
Yeah.
he is, right? And I think that is like we never see him do anything, and like that's maybe part of just the horror of collaboration, where it's like, well, all I'm doing is signing papers. Like, you know, I go, hey, look, you know, you can forgive me. Like, you know, once the
But he's also
the trial is happening
describing
years
people
later.
with their brains out of their head.
No, it's not nice.
Yeah, he's clearly doing some gnarly stuff.
You're right. The only violent scene is that scene that sort of ends the first act of the movie.
Which is like horrifying.
Which is, I think, really well done. It's one of the most, like, there's that bit where he, like, stabs himself in the hand by mistake. Like, it's so clumsy and nasty, and it feels like so what a murder should feel like, realistically.
Because when they first say to Tang Wei, when they try to give her the pitch of like, look, I know we just had that good play. What if we start killing people?
Mm-hmm. Right. It is an escalation.
Opening night was a hit. Why don't we start murdering? And she's like, I don't know how to, I got no experience.
Well, beyond that, they're like, you should seduce him. And she's like, I am a virgin, though.
Right.
Like, there's also that hang
You're talking about two things I got no experience with. Murder and sex.
Yeah.
But they keep on saying this whole kind of thing of like, when you think about those people, what they've done, when you get in the room with them, you'll know how to kill them. They remain emotionally
they have that righteous anger
driven
like,
the entire film,
them.
right? And I think that's kind of, as much as, and I'm still sort of trying to wrap my head around the movie, as much as I can sort of parse the point of the sexuality and what's being said by that relationship, it's that she never stops existing on an emotional level. She always remains a sort of human person.
Right, but I think a lot of the movie, especially the brutal sex scenes later, like that's, the woman's role in this revolutionary movement is even more inhuman. Like, the things they're doing to her are even more like horrifying in a way.
100%, but she is never able to sort of turn it off. She's always feeling everything.
Yeah, she can't just like...
Even though this relationship with him is abusive, she's in it deep enough that she starts having, whether it's like Stockholm Syndrome or whatever it is, whatever sort of transitive feelings for him. And he treats everything like it's just a fucking job. He's able to very clinically and calmly describe what he's done until the end. Right. And kind of keep his hands clean of it, at least emotionally.
Right. Yeah, and I think in theory she is getting sort of corrupted by it or it's insinuating itself in her. There's this weird scene, too, where Old Wu, the spy master for the resistance, is like talking about how the spy has to sort of just never be emotional or involved in any way. Right. I would sit down with this guy in spite of the fact that he killed my wife and 2 children. And then she starts talking about sex, and he's like, nope, go away, can't deal with it. To me, that didn't quite read, where I was like, geez, Old Wu, come on, man.
But that's, they can't. And like she's sort of breaking hearts, like inadvertently, like within the resistance cell, because Wang Li Ham's character is so in love with her and like won't say anything about it, and
then she's forced to sleep with this other
sleeping
guy,
with the other dweeb, just to sort of get some experience in the bedroom. And
there is something interesting in terms of how it fits into his whole filmography, though, because he so often is interested in emotional repression.
Yep.
This is a character whose like superpower and her kryptonite is her emotional access. It's like they go, oh, you should be in the play. And she's like, I'm not an actress. And they put her on stage and she starts crying and screaming. Mm-hmm. And they're like, wait, that's powerful. You can make people fall in love with you. Right. And she's like, I don't know love. I don't know murder. And then they like,
she just walks into her room and everyone's like magnetically drawn to her. There's that scene after while she's still having sex with the student, when she's just, you see her lying in bed. She's covered the sheet, and then she sort of flings off the sheets and like just walks up to the window. And the scene has no purpose apart from that, like, and like we just cut to her, she's dressed and it does feel like Ang Lee's like, this is an awakening for her, as like brutal as it is, like there is independence here that is like a little seductive, right? Like, even though it's not gonna,
because they sell her on this idea. She tells them that she's a virgin, and they say, look, there's only one guy in our group who has any sexual experience. Right. And she's like, with whores. And it's like, look, we don't got, beggars can't be choosers. They send this guy in who comes in, like, takes a final swig out of the bottle. And it's like so depressing.
It's quite depressing.
The whole situation. She looks so physically uncomfortable. Sure. It's so unromantic. But then you see them sleep together a number of times after that, and she starts to sort of gain control over the thing, at least in the sense of her being like, let's just get this over with.
Sure.
He
says like, you're getting the hang of it, and she's like, shut up.
Just finish.
Yeah. All right. I think, to me, what it lacks for her character is some sense of where she starts.
That's true, because she does just kind of like get dropped into the movie. Right. Yeah.
She's like fair. A mousy girl who they like activate, and then she becomes like the center of a hurricane.
What we know about her is that her father has remarried he's in London now and doesn't want her to come over or can't be bothered to sort of get her over to London.
And to be clear again, like Japan is invading China. Like there's this collaboration government. That's what they're resisting. You know, there's like a Chinese nationalist movement is what they're part of.
Yeah.
Which is eventually going to be sort of what retreats to Taiwan, actually. You know, like what cedes Taiwan because they flee the communists. Later.
But she starts seducing him, infiltrates the mahjong game.
She does.
Right. Things get really heated. A couple big mahjong set pieces. And then there's this moment when she comes back, reports to them, oh, they're leaving. They're moving. We're fucked. We miss our window.
Sure.
And then is it his driver?
Like who tips him off, or
the guy who comes back who they have to murder?
Oh, it's oh yeah, good point.
It's the contact who was from the same village as
He's from the same village.
Lee Holmes is from.
But he works with Mr. Yi. He might be the driver. I forget what his role is.
Yeah, and he's kind of he's potentially blackmailing them, or he's like, "Hey, I could work with you guys."
Yeah, he doesn't seem like he's not saying like for sure like you guys are in trouble. Because that would be weird. He wouldn't come to them.
Right.
Yeah.
It's more because he says like, "Hey, I'm from the same village."
You think I don't want liberation,
right? And then they just stab him to death. So
really,
that's the end of that.
Really clumsily.
Well, because it's for real now.
Right.
Like This shit is scary and hard and frightening and violent. Yeah.
And also it's like they kind of think like, oh, it's like a movie. You just stab the guy and he's down.
Right. Yeah. Right. Because they do the very dramatic stab and he's like, and then it's like he's still there. Right. Fighting. Yeah.
They're like looking downstairs. Right. And he's like, he's still alive.
Yeah. He falls down the stairs.
It's not funny, but it like there is that reality
that's a very
of it.
Upsetting line of dialogue where you know somebody could hear you and you're saying he's still alive.
Yeah.
Basically, it reminded me of that moment in Casino where, back to Joe Pesci again, where Joe Pesci says he's still alive about his brother who's been beaten with an aluminum baseball bat.
Yeah.
And he's like basically saying, kill him, please.
Because it's that thing of like, okay, so the one guy makes this like knee-jerk decision, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is what we got to do. We got to kill him. Stab him, thinks that's it. That's done. I did the scariest thing I'm ever going to have to do. And then the more they realize that this guy is like the Black Knight from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the more everyone else has to like jump in and keep taking turns. The deeper they're in, there's no way they get out of this now. There's no way this guy survives. So someone has to deliver the death blow, and everyone just keeps on taking their shot. And she's out in the balcony the whole time.
She's watching from the window.
Room.
She remains innocent of the whole thing.
Well, because it's like that's not the woman's business; that's the man's business, right? You know.
But even the other women in the group.
No, I'm not saying the movie's saying. I'm saying they think
that.
Yeah.
But she's the one person who's not like sort of following this like motley crew of murderers. They finally snap the guy's neck. God, it's like so deeply upsetting.
And then the movie's like, end of Act 1. Like, intermission, and someone comes out with like Jolly Ranchers and Sour Patch Kids. And they're like, how was everyone liking the movie? And everyone's like, I thought it was going to be sexy. Oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
actually, here's a Hims ad for you.
Talk about sexy.
Oh boy.
See, that's like a very like at this point you go like, what the fuck is this movie?
For sure.
And then it jumps 4 years later.
Yeah. Back to Shanghai.
Right.
I guess that's maybe why he has that at the beginning, because then when it makes that jump, you're not like, wait,
it's not as
what
jarring.
The fuck's going on?
Yes.
Right. You know.
Right.
And she's in Shanghai.
She's back in
Japanese
school.
occupied Shanghai, right, and she runs back into.
She's clearly traumatized.
Sure,
she's studying Japanese because that's how nihilistic it is. That she's like, oh fuck it, I'm gonna study the language of the oppressor. She goes to a movie, a Cary Grant movie, thinking that she'll get some kind of Autumn Serenade, something.
Oh,
like
yes.
But like 5 minutes in, the movie simply stops and pro-Japanese propaganda comes on.
Right. And the whole audience goes, ugh, not again. And they stand up and walk out.
I was trying to think is that just like a thing where there's a part of the movie where they're like, well, we got to cut this out, so we'll just put in an ad? Or is it just like, now it's just.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
You think we suckered you in here and now we're just going to show you this.
They stick around. I feel like they're suckered in.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I would hang out. I'd be like, okay, propaganda.
Right. You're like, all right. It's like, look at my watch.
But you're asking, are they trying to kill two birds with one stone and like inflict censorship on American movies
Right. I don't
by
know.
replacing the objecting scenes with
Japanese propaganda.
Yeah.
I don't
It's not
know.
a good business model.
No,
for the
that's
theater,
true.
for the cinema to do that. Because those people aren't coming back. I
Ben
think.
just dropping the Japanese propaganda right here. The thing that I think is kind of interesting is not just are her hands clean of the murder because she's physically on the other side of a window, but she seems so traumatized from the moment the first stabbing happens.
Yeah.
They had been telling her, like, when you're in the room with these guys, you know what these people have done. You have a gun in your hands. You'll want to do it.
Right.
And she seems so uncomfortable with the violence actually happening.
I think that they're all imagining it's going to be one bullet to the
Yes.
head.
Right.
Yes, and then it's
it
like,
was
Sylvester
you know,
Stallone, and then bing,
victory,
salt all
like
over.
another
Yeah.
scratch on our side, like where
Right.
where
And
the
then-
movement continues. I also want to point out that Tony Leung is considered the Hong Kong Cary Grant. I have no idea if
okay.
Ang Lee is
Interesting.
being cute there,
Maybe a
like
little
being
bit.
like, look at this handsome guy in his suit. Turns out he's a sadistically sexual collaborator.
He sucks. So she gets re-recruited.
Yeah.
Look, we didn't know what we were doing earlier. We were
Right.
kids. That was a dog and pony show. Now we made it to the A-list.
Mm-hmm.
We really got an operation. He's back in town. You got to seduce him.
Sure. And the KMT's only gotten more like sophisticated, I think. So right, they got a little more of like an infrastructure now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in Shanghai, and he's like the secret policeman. He's like shooting
Right, he's
people,
risen
or
through the ranks, right.
or signing death papers and all that stuff. And so she's given some training this time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
She's given a suicide capsule.
Yep.
Yes.
Classic.
Eesh. And he says, sew this into your clothes. And then I'm imagining she's going to have to like redo it every time she changes her outfit.
Yeah, that's actually really annoying. I'd be like, can you give me like 40?
Can I have like
suicide
20 and I'll
pills?
do it
Right.
all at once?
Yeah. What if I forget it?
It's very Phantom Thread.
Yeah.
Sewing it into the lining.
Never occurs.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you have a cyanide capsule.
Yeah, right.
So there's this like
This is a funny movie.
this is
A lot
such
of opportunities for humor.
yeah, clearly.
It's like our Amistad episode where we were like, okay.
Things are rough.
Oh wait, I don't know why I just remember this, but sometimes I'm listening to your podcast and I think of jokes that I could have said if I were there.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so you guys were talking about Titanic and how the Italian immigrant character
Of course.
is like a very very stereotypical.
Super Mario
And
himself.
I wanted to jump in at that point and say, as a matter of fact, when he dies, he says, "Mamma mia, that's a spicy iceberg."
Danny Nucci, I hope you're listening. I think that's his name, right?
I just love the notion of a spicy iceberg. Like everyone's scared, then they go like, "There's a bit of heat on this thing. It's got a bit of a kick to
that's
it."
why it went right through the metal.
In my memory, he said Mamma Mia as he dies. He doesn't actually say Mamma Mia. I believe he just goes, as a smokestack crushes him.
It doesn't go, "I'm gonna win."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He's more of a Luigi, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I just
No,
please. Fabrizio. I was like, what the
Fabrizio.
fuck's his name? Yeah.
He's a good guy. He's a really good guy.
So yeah,
That's my-
not many yucks in this.
no.
No, especially not in, not in any of it. I was
Right.
about to say,
So
apart
the-
from the Mahjong. Mahjong's fun.
Mahjong, no Shanghai yucks. There's some early, more innocent time Hong
Right.
Kong.
The
Right.
theater,
Yeah.
the students. There's a little bit of ball
Yes.
busting, I guess.
But this
And
is
then
the section of the movie
The second act is more just
Yeah.
like Tony Leung's balls.
where it gets. We go from ball busting
Sorry.
to balls. No, but this is where the movie starts getting really terse.
Well,
'Cause
right.
The first scene where it's like, okay, this is some femme fatale,
Mm-hmm.
like spy seduction thing we've seen in movies before. And he just essentially assaults her.
Right, he just you're thinking
he
right. The honey
rapes-
trap
he
is
rapes
working.
her.
He rapes her,
Right, so he
and he
rapes-
attacks her. He
Jeez.
binds her with
Yeah.
a belt, and then he unbinds her and hits her with the belt. You're
Right.
like, oh, he's unbinding her now. Oh,
But there's
it's a
It's very strange. It's a very
Yeah.
strange series of choices in this scene, and
Mm.
I think that I guess you could say he only knows how to communicate at this point
Right,
through
sure.
violence,
right.
I would think that is the idea. I'm sure if you sat Ang Lee down, that would be his concept.
And
of
she
the
is
scene.
stuck having to bear it,
Right.
given that this is her job to try to kill the guy.
She's
So
this
that's also
emotional
justified,
satellite. Right.
But what the part that I don't quite get, even with the Tony Leung and the Rodrigo Prieto beautiful shooting of it all, is, and she's starting to get into it. Like I don't
Right.
get that.
I
Right.
don't either. The best I can figure it out what my analysis is just this notion of not the repetitiveness of it, but the duration, the length of time she has to continue seeing him and being involved with him.
Right.
Eventually, like it's biologically,
it's taking hold.
Yeah.
In a creepy abused relationship. And I think that is true about victims of abuse, that some aspect of it, they need to internalize some aspect of it as making some sense.
That's my sense of it, is not that it's like she's falling for him because she's enjoying the sex. It's because she is having to repeat these acts over and over and over again.
She's having to pretend so avidly that she is in love with this guy that it becomes a sort of a fact.
Because she has that scene where they're sort of briefing her.
Yeah, and she basically like breaks down.
Right. And she sort of says it's a very odd feeling plotting to assassinate the man that you're involved with.
Can I swoop in with Context Corner?
Please.
All right, so this is based on a novel by Eileen Chang, who is a very famous Chinese writer who is long dead.
It's like a short novel.
Yes,
right?
a novella, perhaps you could call it. And I think a lot of this is in the novel. And she's trying to write about honey traps are very common in the days of the KMT and the resistance and stuff. And I think she's trying to sort of de-glamorize, she's trying to really dig into the inherent misogyny of that and how these women were used and abused. And obviously it's based on she claims it's not, but it's inspired by the story of a real Chinese spy who was executed, who became sort of a folk hero. And I think their family were annoyed by this movie because they were like, she never fell in love with the guy and, yada, yada, that's not how it went. So they had to be very clear, just inspired by it. It's not about it.
Sure. Oh my God. For the first time ever.
Yellow card.
It's great to be here at this moment.
Do you guys, all right. It's
trouble.
a spam call. Thank you. I want to ask you a question. Do you get spam calls every day now?
Yep.
So much in the last few months.
And it's always from numbers that have my area code and my exchange.
Yeah.
So it basically looks like my number.
Yeah.
That's how they get you.
It's so,
it could
how
be
are
you
they
calling
doing
yourself.
It? Exactly. Where I'm supposed to be 646, must be a friend of mine. And then I pick it up and it's you want to trip on a cruise or whatever.
Yeah, I get 5 a day now.
What's going on?
I have no idea. There was a New York Times article about it.
And I said there was Chinese, in fact. So there were a lot of Chinese spam companies and stuff that were, but how do they do that? How do they make the number something I recognize?
Do they leave voicemails?
Yep.
Okay.
I rarely get voicemails.
I have
sometimes.
one now that it's constantly being you need to call us back because you have a lot lot of credit problems.
Right.
And
the IRS is looking too.
I know. Yeah. But it's something you owe us money. It's they're
yeah, there was
yelling.
an IRS thing.
IRS for sure.
I keep on getting college loans and I go, you fuckers, I dropped out of college. I'm dumb. You can't trick me because I'm a loser and I dropped out.
They're just trolling you.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, credit.
Who are you, my dad?
Auto. Sometimes
I wish I had college
insurance on your car is running out, and I'm like, is it? Wait a second. It's that trick. Anyway, sorry. That's
what kind? Those are really bad people. I mean, I know that's sort of an obvious thing to say, but someone should do
think
something.
It's cool though.
That's true.
Not gonna
think
lie.
it's super cool?
I think it's kind of cool to be like, "What's your thing? What are you into?" Well, a scam caller guy.
Yeah, those calls you get. That's me.
That's me.
On a scale from 1 to 10, how surprised would you be if it turned out Ben secretly was running a phone scam bank?
Yeah, that'd be classic.
Offshore.
I feel like that's just looking from the outside, that's a persona that he adopts. Is the kind of edgy,
one of his characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perhaps slightly criminal. But that now that I see him,
You're you're
meeting Ben for the first time. He's a sweet boy.
Yeah.
I'm a bad man.
Okay.
Hey, you better not cross me. I also want to point out this film was written by James Schamus.
Yes.
Frequent. And Wang Huiling, who wrote Eat, Drink, Man, Woman and Crouching Tiger.
So it's the same team.
Same team, exactly. Yeah.
Good stuff. I mean, that is to say, they do good stuff.
They do. But this is a weird one. It's so weird that he made this movie.
It's so weird. I mean, I think you're onto something there with the idea of trying to de-glamorize that type of narrative.
Right.
Because it does feel like one of those movies that's hey, you know that type of story you've heard before? We're going to show you the version of it that just sucks.
Right.
It just makes you really uncomfortable and is as awful as the real world.
That's the thing. Because it'd be one thing if it was just that he's an abusive monster. Sure, that's fine. We understand that. I'm sure that's what these people were often like. But like the further uncomfortableness of like, and she does eventually just sort of get Stockholm syndromed into it.
It's such a bummer.
To the extent that it fails. I mean, this is the thing. The movie ends with her warning him because he's beginning to show just like slivers of humanity, and so she's sort of moved enough to prevent his death.
She is so moved by his love. I don't think it's even that she's so in love with him, but she is moved by his gesture, which is clearly all he can manage is to buy her some shit.
Right.
And she's like, it's so nice, and he's like, well, I just wanted you to have something. And just that alone, she's like sort of like flabbergasted because he's been such an inhuman monster.
Right, but she's sort of a person who can never stop seeing people as people.
Yeah.
And he's kind of a person who is able to completely turn that off.
Imagine going like, all right, you've pitched, you've gone to a boardroom, right? You've had to like going in like, all right, so it's like sexy cat and mouse thriller. Right. She's trying to kill the guy.
I'm like, and the great thing is,
here's what happens. She saves him, is executed off screen, and then he feels bad about it at the end.
Yeah.
What
also,
do you think, guys?
All of her friends are killed too.
Right. And they don't even know that she is the one who messed it up.
She fucks up, not just for herself, but she gets her 5 friends killed.
And they feel guilty. They think it's their fault. And then he does, feel some weird existential regret, and then the movie's over.
He does sit down on a bed and look sad for about 10 seconds.
I mean, when you're putting it that way, it sounds a little like the ending of Rogue One.
Yeah.
Hey.
It's just sort of complete.
Well, they ripped us off.
Let's not go all up,
motherfuckers.
They built a time machine.
Went back.
Watched Rogue One. Went back again.
Yeah.
Which is not cool.
What were you going to say?
Misuse of the technology.
Does he seem haunted?
A little haunted. Okay. And I can just imagine studio being like, sure, 15 million you were asking for. Okay, here you go. And
do they give a check like that?
Is that
or is it a big check?
Yeah, do they have like a big check?
They do. Well, what they do, they have a big
Bob
a big thing
like,
with a big check, and then they do a big sign. Yeah,
and they
signing
have a big
ceremony.
Pen.
Yeah, big pen.
Ed McMahon is there.
I love
They pull a giant lever to initiate the green light.
Confetti comes down. Oh, there's the green light. Yeah. Well, no, the great thing is that like the studio every studio head has a big button. Which is a green light button.
Sure. Right. Red or green. And if they hit red, is there a trap door and you fall?
Yeah, you fall through the trap door. Well, they stopped doing that because some people got hurt. But they still hit the red button and the lights flash, but you
and then like someone just comes in and goes like, you have to leave now.
Yeah.
But underneath the trap door is director jail, right?
Director jail is a real thing.
Right.
It was pretty nice. You just don't get to make movies, but like it's good beds.
Otherwise, it's like a hotel.
Service.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
it's like a hotel. Yeah.
No, the thing that's a real bummer in this movie is that you go, okay, so one of two things is probably going to happen. Either she's going to fall for him, find his humanity, save him.
Sure.
Or,
turn him around. Right.
Or she's going to realize he can't be saved, and she's going to kill him, and it's going
he'll die.
Kill her that she had to kill him.
It'll be tragic in a way that he's dead, or brutal, or whatever. But he will die.
Right. And instead, it's she has a moment of pure humanity that she cannot suppress,
and he does not learn
in kind.
But you also learn, and I wonder if it's a bit of a get out of jail
slightly,
free
but he does still sign her death paper.
He learns a bit, but then it turns out his number 2 guy has been following the thing all along.
Yes.
And
so
they're basically
they were like, we were
anyway?
hoping to crack open the cell essentially, which
what a bummer.
Right.
Yeah.
Oy.
And that's the thing. They're basically telling him like, you were quasi expendable to us. Like if you die during this, shrug.
They didn't get old Wu. Old
no.
Wu got away, the spy master. Yeah. And it turns out also there were 2 other honeypot traps.
Right.
I think they mentioned. Actually, no, someone tells that to her. Oh, old Wu says that to her, to Tang Wei, that there have been 2 other attempts to seduce this dude, and each time he killed them.
Yeah.
Right.
So she's the 3rd.
Right. But I think the implication is partly like that the lingering affection from back in the day is sort of like interesting enough.
This was the first time he actually sort of fell.
Right. So there is something.
That is where this movie gets so blank checky, is just how fucking bleak it is. And then that bleakness tied to an NC-17 rating. Like the fact that he was able to win both of those arguments. Like the ending is just so soul crushing.
Yes.
But also, it's going to be box office poison because we have 6 minutes of graphic sex scenes.
Right.
It's a curious film.
I mean, I assume he had Final Cut and all that, and he was just like, this is the movie I want to make, and
wouldn't let them cut it down for an R. It ended up getting an R cut when it went to home video because this was still a Blockbuster era, and most home video stores will not stock NC-17 movies.
Right. So I watched it on, I think it was through Apple. Do you think I saw the NC-17 one? Because now I'm feeling like I missed out.
No, I don't think you did, because I first looked on Apple, and it looked like it was saying, and this was what was weird, it was like the R-rated version you didn't see in theaters. And I was like,
that's because it's not. Wait a second.
You're trying to make this sound sexier, but I think it's less sexy. And then, because the difference in time is 1 minute.
It's 1 minute.
Yes. So it's really balls, some more balls.
But
I mean, like really, I think
Johnny Lung's scrotum.
Yeah.
I did see the back.
Sure. I think you just missed
back
more
of
of
the scrotum.
It's all. It's not.
I think they cut
whatever.
specific shots or made certain shots shorter or limited the thrusts. I mean, all this insane shit that they do. I mean, it is bizarre how much the MPAA runs off of like a checklist system, where it's like 1 thrust, 2 thrust, NC-17.
You know what this process is called eventually?
What?
Frame fucking is when
and
literally I've had marketing and post people to talk to me about it. Like, I mean, listen, they're going to get really mad if we feel we're getting into frame fucking, but that's what it's called. Sure. And it's because you're like, well, okay, you know, there are 12. We'll take out 12 frames of frontal nudity from this shot.
Sure,
and we'll get closer.
And
it's horse trading. We're not supposed to say that, by the way. I think I'm not supposed to have said that because the MPA is like, no, it's not negotiable.
We
never
just do that.
Say what it is.
The MPA is so strange. Well, I mean, and also this is the thing is like this film was released uncut in Hong Kong and Taiwan, cut in Singapore, and the Singapore the people of Singapore cried out and were like, we can handle it. And so then it was released uncut.
Wow. And they're like, no, we've gone too far. And then they all had sort of breakdowns like Tong Wei has.
But in mainland China, a lot was cut. The dead refugees were cut.
Oh, wow. So not even the
stabbing scene was cut down a lot. 2 of the sex scenes with the student were cut. 3 with Mr. Yi were cut. The shot of her going to the window was cut. Dialogue modified in diamond ring scene so that she does not betray the resistance.
Wow.
So they just changed the movie.
Big deal.
Right. Yeah. And she's still blacklisted by the Chinese movie industry. She was replaced by Maggie Q in some big movie that she was about to be in.
Right, I saw that.
And so she moves to the UK and does other stuff for a while. But now she has made this comeback. But nonetheless, despite all the stuff we're saying, it was a huge hit in China. It did really well. Yeah. By the standards of this kind of movie.
Here it made a couple $1 million, and Focus was like, we think this is pretty good for an NC-17, but it kind of was just forgotten.
Well, here's the other thing. So this film was at the Venice Film Festival. Ang Lee had won the Golden Lion 2 years ago for Brokeback. He wins again.
Yeah.
Which is, I feel like that's really unusual. Festivals are often very you already won once.
Right. Especially back to back.
He's up against, I'm looking at it, is Zhang Yimou, the famous mainland Chinese director. It was the chair. So it's sort of an interesting pick in a lot of ways because this is sort of a, it's very fudgy, morally, gross movie.
It's more interesting than a chair, That was kind of slow. Just 2 hours of a chair.
Atonement. I'm seeing some of the Venice movies.
It was just a chair?
It was just a chair for 2 hours. It was
Did people sit in it?
No, it just sits there. And,
Clint Eastwood says hi to it quickly at one point.
Hey, give me back our country.
Sorry. Atonement. Assassination of Jesse James.
Okay.
I'm Not There. Michael Clayton.
Yeah, I mean, 2007 was a big year.
This is a good Venice festival.
Yeah.
There's some Romare movies. One of those 90-year-old Eric Romare movies. Kenneth Branagh had Sleuth there. That was whatever that one.
But that's it wins that award and then has no awards traction after that.
No,
it gets on for best. I think film at the Globes.
I believe she got an Indie Spirit nomination.
I think both of them got Spirit nominations for lead. Yeah.
It got a BAFTA foreign film and a Golden Globe foreign film nomination, and they both got. And there's some cinematography. It's very, very pretty.
Yeah, it's really.
But it's kind of an
beautiful
odd,
stuff.
duck, forgotten movie in his filmography.
Yeah.
And it also now feels like you wonder if he would ever do something like this again, now that he's on such a technological kick.
I wonder. That's a good point. I wonder if, because it does feel like, there are periods that he'll just dip back into, like, I'm going to make a Chinese language movie again.
Yeah.
And then this is the last one, this last time he did that. So will he do it again?
Well, here's a question for you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
You have a very eclectic filmography.
That's how I like to be. That's why I like filmmakers like Ang Lee. They're all rounders.
Well, this is my question, because we love that about him. With you, do you feel like that's a strategic thing of, I want to mix it up, I like doing different types of things? Is it trying to constantly zag from whatever you did last?
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely. I think it might have started. It might have started with doing American Pie and thinking like, and getting offered every teen sex comedy,
and you don't want to get stuck in that.
I don't want to. Yeah. But then just sort of thinking, it's so hard to make movies, right? It's at least a year out of your life of really, really hard work, and I don't want to do the same thing twice. And interestingly, strategically, it could be a bad decision because people become sort of known as auteurs often for doing the same kind of movie.
You expect a certain tone or genre or whatever.
So that you develop a brand, and it's a different thing to sort of bounce around. Like, I think Ang Lee does it. You guys have talked about Soderbergh, but he really puts a stamp on it somehow. Michael Winterbottom, these guys, people who are always like, I'm going to do this crazy thing. But usually I'll make a movie and then I'll be like, oh, that was really hard. I don't want to do that again.
So you're zagging mostly just because you're like, oh, no, thank you. Like, what's this? Right. I haven't done this.
So it's like whatever will get me to do it again is usually something quite different from what I've done before.
Well, because you could have so easily, after American Pie, just cash out on that for 20 years. Just
I think so.
Constantly be a guy who was getting all the big live-action comedy scripts.
Yeah.
And being able to choose what you want to take on, or develop whatever you wanted around whatever personality.
Yeah, but I think I'd want to die.
Right. You would feel trapped in that sort of...
I mean, I guess you could perhaps, if you looked at all the stuff I did, like critique me for trying to be the sad clown, like where a comedian is like, when I really want to do dramatic roles, and then it's like, oh God, we got to put up with like sad Jim Carrey again.
No, but there's such a weird, and I say this in a good way, like it's not just like, oh, please take me seriously. It's like, you did like 2 big like YA adaptations.
That's true.
You did like dramedies, you did drama, you did like comedy.
I'd like to think that people are like, huh?
Which I like.
Your new movie is like a thriller, right?
This is right. Yeah. It is
it is an assassination attempt movie, kind of. Right?
It is the abduction of Adolf Eichmann, the organizer of the Final Solution by the Israelis in 1960. So it's a spy thriller.
And Eichmann was one of those like the functionary type, right? He wasn't like the grandly evil one. He was the one who's like, I'll just make sure everything works perfectly to eliminate all the Jews.
That's the version that Hannah Arendt kind of put forward,
the banality of evil,
and it was an argument that he sort of put forward when he was put on trial.
Right, he's one of the few. Right.
There are also other takes on him which point out that he was actually kind of a careerist and ambitious, and that at times he seems to be an ideologue as well. So it's a kind of an interesting character in as much as it's sort of hard to understand whether he is sort of the embodiment of evil or just some guy who got swept up in it, or a functionary or what.
Yeah.
That movie Conspiracy. I like that movie, the HBO movie.
Yes, that was the one about the Wannsee Conference, right? With Kenneth Branagh and Stanley Tucci, the Tucci, Touch of the Tucci.
It's more than a touch. It's it's the soupçon of the Tucci.
Yeah.
And he plays him basically as the sort of like softly spoken kind of
he's
guy
very
who's adjusting all the cutlery,
kind of guy.
right,
like the mid-level exec.
But he has this moment where he talks. I've seen that movie a weird amount of times. I'm really obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. It's a Frank Pearson movie. It was a TV movie. It's a great movie.
It is really good.
Where he talks to someone where he's like about like how he's learned Hebrew, and he'll talk to rabbis, and like, he likes to understand the mind of the Jew, like in ways that the others are just like, aren't they just awful? Like, I'm not just supposed to hate them.
Well, that's sort of like the kind of the stuff that Tarantino was playing on in with Christoph Waltz's sort of great monologue at the beginning of like how to think like them.
Right.
That's like this stuff in like In Less Caution, in like when you look at like Nazi Germany, when you look at like today, where you go like, where's the dividing line between these people who are like, I got a thing I got to make happen, and these people who are like, it's a living.
Yeah.
You know, and like both are evil in terms of what
You're
the
saying
final
that the
output
Flintstones is about collaborators?
Well, it is 100%.
I mean, they do have like a chattel system with all these poor animals who have to like do their dishes or whatever,
and live as the fucking garbage disposal.
Oh my god,
and they eat them.
Is so weird.
Flintstones is so fucked.
If someone came to you and said, "We're bringing back the Flintstones,"
yeah,
would you be like, yeah, I can do this? Like,
do you feel like you'd have a take?
No, I don't. I don't.
I don't know if there can be a take on the Flintstones. I just feel like that is a supreme Hollywood 90s blank check movie where they're like sets, costumes, like blow this out. Like this should be an epic. Make a cartoon real. It's not good.
I was very disturbed. I never saw it, but I was very disturbed by the trailer in which John Goodman, he says like, I got a flat, and he holds up his foot, and his foot has this long gash in it. It upset me so much because it looked incredibly painful, and so there should be blood sort of streaming from
You've been avoiding the movie since then.
Like Lust Caution, they want you to reckon with.
Well, also Lust Caution, apart from the rape, also this tearing of that really nice dress bothered me because I was like, oh fuck, that was like a really, really like carefully tailored dress. Again, and also like, how is she going to get home?
It feels very intentional, right? Where he's like all the finery of this, like all the way you're being dressed up, and everyone's so classy, and those mahjong scenes are so like, oh yeah, and then he's just like ripping it apart.
I'll say, David, you've talked about a lot how much you hate when people don't eat meals that were prepared in movies. I feel that way about clothes getting ripped.
Yeah.
I do every time it happens, even when it's like a fully consensual, sexy, fun time. Let's rip each other's clothes off thing. I'm like, they paid for that. So
it's like somebody's got.
I'm like that with cigarettes, where like someone doesn't smoke like the whole thing. I'm like, come on,
it's a waste.
It's a waste.
If they throw it down after two puffs,
I'm like, get out of here. You don't really smoke.
Lust Caution. Can we play the box office game?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You guys excited?
Pumped.
I'm always astonished at the ability that you guys have.
Stupid.
This is a weird one. Any September box office game is usually going to be weird.
Okay, so this is a period of time I think it might be very burned into my mind because this is me starting in my one semester of film school.
Oh, wow. Sure. September 28th, 2007.
September 2007.
Just, like, flew to California.
This is my first couple weeks in film school.
I'm looking at Box Office Mojo. Or do you want to play?
I've never heard somebody like gazump you and get in before you
If you want to
ditch.
try,
you can jump in.
I'm trying to figure out what will be more fun for me, whether to get it up on IMDb or to, I guess it'd be Box Office Mojo.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You got to go with the Moj.
No, I'm going to try.
I'll say my thing is I remember these movies very vividly because this was the first time in my life, having grown up in New York, that I didn't have movie-going autonomy.
If you remember any of these movies vividly, I tip my cap to you. One of them is
What I'm saying to you is I think I do because I was living in California now. I didn't have a driver's license. If I wanted to see a movie, I had to talk someone into seeing it.
Oh,
so
right,
I was
you needed a lift to
aware of what to see. And there were times where I saw movies I didn't want to see because I was like, I need to see something.
Something needs to move.
The guy with a car would rather see this than that. So let's test it.
All right. So number one, opening this weekend, making $22.9 million.
Okay.
Just to be clear, Lust Caution opened at number 49 in one theater. Though it had a great per-screen average, 63,000. Very good per-screen average. I assume that was the Angelica or whatever.
Right?
It's
gigantic. That's like every seat.
I mean, it was Ang Lee, baby. His Brokeback follow-up, you know.
Yeah.
This is a sports comedy.
The game plan?
I had more.
Wow.
Do you remember what this movie is? Because I did not.
It sounds like a movie.
It's
the game plan, but I have no idea what that is.
Has a daughter, right?
That's correct.
And he's a
what if an athlete had a child that he had to raise?
That was people couldn't get over it.
And she likes ballet. Why doesn't she like football? The only thing he does.
This was interesting because football is different from ballet.
Very different. Very different.
This is the boardroom picture. It's like football, like the slide. Right. There's just a picture of a football.
Right, and then they click ballet, and people go, wait, what happened in the last movie? These are two different pitches. Football and ballet can't be in the same film.
I just remember the poster is him. The daughter is in her ballet outfit, and and he's looking like. But he also has like a bulldog under his arm.
Correct.
And so they're like, and you don't there's going to be a bulldog too.
Yeah.
Like
P.S.
yeah, right. Like
That's-
get ready.
That's the way.
Dog wearing a tiara.
It is.
Yeah, 100%.
But dogs
Because
don't
she
do
put
that.
a tiara on a bulldog. Who does that?
This is a Disney movie.
The
you know.
Disney live action family comedies that era all needed an animal. Like the pacifier, they weirdly spotlighted a duck in all the advertising. The poster for the pacifier is like Vin Diesel with like ammo and the baby.
Oh yeah,
and
that's
the
right.
duck.
That's right.
Maybe
like-
they're testing. It's like, we don't know what to do. The only thing that tests well is this duck. And they're like,
Right.
more duck.
But that's their thing. They like get an action star, put them with kids, throw in an animal.
There's like in the Angry Birds trailer, for some reason, this joke must have tested well, but one of the characters saying, "Oh my God," and like they did that like 10 times in the trailer. It's like,
you have kids. Do you see a lot of kids movies? Like, do they?
actually, no, because we're kind of Amish about that. We're like, we
Really?
don't let them see much. But I sadly, I did watch. I'm sorry. I'm sure somebody I know worked on it. But the Angry Birds, I did.
I
watch
worked on it. I
checked-
directed the Angry Birds.
I'm really sorry.
It's fine.
I checked my email. Basically, I caught up on my email
sure.
throughout the entire Angry Birds. The Angry Birds is actually like just about how immigration is bad. I think because
Yes,
it's
yes.
like
There's
these
it's
green
the-
pigs, don't trust them.
The pigs are bad,
no.
right? And they've arrived. Yeah, I heard someone, Emily
Gotta
Yoshida was
knock 'em
talking
outta
about this.
here.
Yeah. Can you tell me someone else who's in the game plan?
Fuck.
I really, my cap is off.
There
here.
has to be like
I mean, tell me who directed it. I've never heard of him.
Andy Flickman.
Nice.
Director of Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
Because I know he also did the Escape to Witch Mountain or Race to Witch
That's
Mountain.
right.
He did
It's
the Witch
Race to
Mountain.
Witch
reboot.
Mountain, yes.
Right. He was like an
He was
early
one of the Rock's guys. Yeah.
rock guy. I think that was the first movie where he wasn't credited as the Rock, where it was just Dwayne Johnson on the poster.
The Rock.
Oh, it was Dwayne the Rock. Okay. Well, that movie probably has someone who was on a sitcom at that time, an adult, and it probably has one weirdly overqualified actor to play like the head of the team or something like that.
Kind of.
John Gielgud.
Right. It must have a like.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have like Janet McTeer or whatever you're thinking. No, Kira Sedgwick is in it.
Oh, the closer.
The closer herself.
Yeah.
Morris Chestnut. I'm guessing he
Okay.
possibly plays another player or maybe a
No,
coach
not.
or
I
something.
used to play basketball with him.
Very
Very
really?
good guy.
Is he a
Very
nice
good
guy? Mr.
Great
Rosewood
3-point
himself.
shot as well. Clutch
He's
shooter.
incredibly handsome.
He's one of the best
He's
looking
very
guys.
handsome.
And
also.
he's one of those guys where you're like, oh, he's 50? Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
could have told me he's
Fuck you.
28. Yeah, you know, like he is incredibly handsome. All right, number 2.
Okay.
And this is, you see, this is your film school year. This is the film
Yeah.
I'm doing. This is the year I'm doing Red Carpet
Okay.
for People Magazine. And I did attend the Golden Compass's world
You
premiere,
ducked
as I
me.
told you. I guess
Wisely.
I ducked you.
You might have dodged
Yeah,
him.
no, not him. Not him.
I went to the
All right.
after party too. It was like in like the Docklands, and it was like so lavish. I remember we were like driven out on a bus.
Okay, wait. I'm sorry.
I
Hold on.
remember that.
I'm sorry, Chris. Hold on one second. This is uncomfortable. David,
No, the bits were tired.
I know, that's what
this
I'm
is
telling you.
why-
That's what I'm telling you.
What were you doing there?
you can't bring it up. The bit's retired.
Wait, I'm not allowed to talk about my life?
No, we agreed that we retired the bit that you're from England.
Do you see the jersey?
The jersey's up there. We've
in the
retired the bit
rafters.
that you're from London.
So I'm not allowed. So you're alleging that I was just pretending the whole time, like that it was my bit?
I'm saying it was a bit, and everything that was contained within the bit has now been retired. Sit
No,
there in
no,
the
abs-
rafters.
And
Outrageous.
One MVP,
Yeah,
2 championships.
Right, yeah.
Number 2 at the box office.
Okay.
Is a film I attended the red carpet for. I believe I've talked about it on this podcast. It's an action movie.
The Kingdom. Because he told the story about Jamie Foxx in the
He
SUV.
drove his SUV into the theater.
He drove it up the
Oh,
red
yeah, and he
carpet.
said, it's the kingdom, see it.
That
And then
is
drove
what
off.
that's what he, and they backed up the red. I've never seen anything like it. I was truly astonished. But then Jennifer Garner told me that she would never allow Violet to act in a movie.
Oh, wow.
And I wrote that up, and it was like the biggest story people had that week. And like I got
Really?
like a call from someone being
Wow.
like, great job on that story. And I was like, what? Just like one quote.
Wow.
Yeah, because moms.
Yeah.
Moms like moms.
It was one of those things where I was like, and how's Violet? And she's like, great. And someone else, I don't know, maybe I was like, do you think she'd be in a movie? She's like, no, we put the kibosh on that. And I came home and my editor was like, what'd you get? And I was like, And he was like, write it up.
Stop
There
the
you go.
presses.
Yeah.
And you got a runner who ran.
Weird
Yeah.
job
I'll say
red carpet reporting is.
she always had
She's
her.
very nice, to be clear.
Oh, she had her kids on set with her during draft day.
Sure.
Really fucking good mom.
Hey.
Like she was like constantly momming in between takes.
I can buy that.
Which like A is impressive because we're talking about how weird acting is. that she'd like do a take and then go like, how are you guys doing? Like jump right back into it.
I met her when we were shooting something in Hawaii, and she was working with a friend of mine on Pearl Harbor. Can that be right?
Yeah, she's in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. She was really cool. Really nice.
That's Young Garner too. I feel like that's pre-Alias, or maybe maybe it's during
concurrent.
Alias. I can't remember. All right, number 3 is a sequel.
It's not a squeakquel.
No, in a long-running franchise. I actually have to find out which edition it even is.
Is it a Saw picture?
No, it's not a Saw. Those were firm October releases.
Right.
It is the third. It's the third. I think it's a great movie. Okay.
Yeah. So, you've given me the hint, which is that it doesn't have a number.
No,
you weren't sure which one it was because of the subtitle.
No, it's a colon.
Is it Resident Evil Extinction? Apocalypse?
How do you do it?
No, I was right the first time.
You had it.
There's there's no point my even trying to do this. I'm going to start raising up this. How are you getting this so that I can follow
Box
along?
Office Mojo.
Oh, okay.
Resident Evil Extinction, which is kind of the first good Resident Evil movie.
Mm-hmm.
The first one's okay.
Yeah.
But the CGI is like kind of not great, and I'm like a big fan of these movies, to be clear.
That's the one that has a bus driver named Otto.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Ben, you like it?
Well, you recommended it to me, and it's on my list.
Oh, sure. Yes, right.
I'm really into video games. Movies.
Yeah, Ben's,
that's right. No, I know that about you.
You like Assassin's Creed.
Not moist
Assassin's
movies.
Creed.
You like wet.
He likes wet
movies.
slick flicks.
He likes the slick flick.
That's why you subscribe to Wetflix, the Netflix for wet movies.
Yeah.
The moister, the better.
Thank you. Comedy points.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
What if the subcategories are like damp, drenched, like
films with a soggy protagonist?
All right. So Extinction. Extinction's kind of the first good one,
right?
Because the second one's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Extinction is where they kind of figure out what the formula of these movies are, and it's doing what like Mad Max Fury Road does 10 years later, and no one gives it credit for it.
Interesting.
Great movie. Number 4 is a comedy starring like a real hot comedy person of the like moment.
Oh, so it was like a brief moment.
Pretty brief.
Okay, so I'm gonna guess it was a Dane Cook movie.
Correct. But which Dane Cook movie?
And I'm going to tell you the embarrassing reason I know this. Was it Good Luck Chuck?
It was Good Luck Chuck. Which I think is really the tail, because I think Employee of the Month did okay, right? Like,
we go lower from there because we haven't even gotten to My Best Friend's Girl yet.
Yeah,
I think that follows Good Luck Chuck, right?
Well, let's look at his filmography. You got Good Luck Chuck in 2007. Employee of the Month was the year before. My Best Friend's Girl is 2008.
Right, because Good Luck Chuck
and that's it.
And My Best Friend's Girl have almost identical premises.
Oh, really?
Good Luck Chuck
is it Good Luck Chuck that he has bad luck?
Good Luck Chuck is that
once you break up with him, after you slept with him, you then meet the love of your life.
Exactly.
Okay.
If you sleep with him, you will find
your soulmate. Right.
My Best Friend's Girl is
kind of a good premise. Like, you could go do a movie.
Is that, I haven't seen it, is that a magical fact, or is it a tendency that people are noticing?
I think it's a
tendency. In the world of the movie.
I think they don't make it magical.
And it had
I think they don't commit
really
enough.
doubled down on, what's his name? Dan Fogler.
So I was going to say, I remember this because I had the Good Luck Chuck character poster for Jessica Alba. I was in a big Jessica Alba phase at the time.
That's truly one of the most distressing things.
It's one of the most embarrassing things I've ever said.
With the ice cream cone.
That was on my wall in my college dorm room.
That was on your wall.
That was on my wall. No, keep it in and double it. I want to be open. I want to be candid. I want to own my mistakes.
Was it a
was not framed
situation? Or
I'll tell you what I did.
Tack?
No, I thought this was kind of clever.
Oh,
I got grip tape. I got red grip tape and I made little X's on the corners and I thought it looked nice and it didn't hold very well with my concrete or cement walls.
Also had that very weird poster that was a ripoff of the John Lennon Yoko Ono picture.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Very strange marketing campaign. Not a hit.
The album poster, it's her holding an ice cream cone and the ice cream's dripping down her hand. And then the tagline is, "There's something about Jessica."
Come on.
Yep.
But you know what? Actually, when American Pie came out, I think the poster said there's something about your first piece. I hated everything about that.
That's the
both
tag.
its derivativeness and the. I mean,
I hate to say this, but it's very, but it is a good tagline. Like in terms of not a good tagline.
In terms of its effectiveness,
exactly.
Right?
It does kind of wedge in your brain.
Yeah.
Wasn't American Pie one of those movies that had like a million titles though, right? Like they sort of cycled through.
Yeah, it was at first called something like teen sex comedy that can be made for under whatever.
I've read that legend
that you will hate,
but everyone will love or whatever. Right? Yeah.
And then it was called East Grand Rapids High.
Great title.
No, not East Grand Rapids. Sorry, East Great Falls High.
Sure.
Yeah, which should have been, frankly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
and then the studio at one point tried to sell us on comfort food.
That's weird.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Like you just described two scenarios in which your career possibly goes nowhere.
I know, like my life should have flashed before my eyes.
Yeah. I don't know. American Pie, there's something about your first piece.
Just for contrast, my best friend's girl is Academy Award nominee Kate Hudson dumps Jason Biggs. Mm-hmm. So Jason Biggs hires Dane Cook to pretend to be a shitty guy.
To by
drive
contrast,
her
to break her heart, right? Yeah, right.
But that's a great idea. I mean, just not for a movie, but for life.
But it is weird that there are two movies in a row that were Dane Cook being the worst guy who can make people end up with the people they should be with, but then he ends up falling for the people.
So in Good Luck Chuck, does he like
falls for Jessica Alba?
And does he like not want to sleep with her? Is that the gimmick?
I think that's the bit.
He goes into a 40 days, 40 nights type
situation. Think it's that sort of bit. And then I think in My Best Friend's Girl, it's like a Mrs. Doubtfire thing where he gets so into this persona of the asshole, but still somehow.
Yeah, that's kind of like a triple reverse
the tall order
alien
pretending to be an asshole.
Yes. Also, Alec Baldwin's in it.
Fair enough. That's in the Baldwin comeback phase, where
Correct.
30 Rock is
just starting up again.
hyping. Yeah, exactly.
The Baldwin-essence.
The Baldwin-essence. Number 5 is a great movie, real throwback. I'm giving you nothing because you're getting them all anyway.
I told you this period was burning my brain.
It's a remake.
It's a remake. It's a throwback.
Remake of a great movie. But I think this is a good movie.
Is it 3:10 to Yuma?
It is the only James Mangold movie that is not a secret Western. It's just a Western.
Oh, he's out in the open about it.
Right. Yeah, good movie. Russell Crowe, Christian Bale, Peter Fonda.
Yeah. Luke Wilson, weirdly, isn't that?
Yes, Luke Wilson. One of the early Ben Foster is crazy movies.
Yeah, Ben Foster
where he
like
walks on screen and you're like, this guy. Yeah.
Yeah. You want extra sour cream on this one?
Ben Foster with a barrel of paprika.
Foster Supreme.
One of the, because like I was going to say in Hostiles, I think I brought this up. When he appears on screen, it's because that they're like, could you take this prisoner to the next town? And then it's Ben Foster, and you just go like, no, do not accept.
His next 15 minutes
return to sender. He's only trouble.
Do you guys remember in Cold Mountain where they demonstrate that a character is loco by having him jump backwards off a fence or something?
Charlie Hunnam, the albino.
Was that Charlie Hunnam?
Yes.
Okay.
That's another example of a character who's extra where they're like, how do we show these crazy? Well, he does everything backwards and also he's albino.
Yeah, that's a weird one. We got the Brave one, the sort of...
the Jodie Foster
Death Wish.
Revenge, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Woodcock, which I think you've invoked on this podcast multiple times.
Probably.
With
a
Billy
good
Bob
reference.
Thornton. Directed by Craig Gillespie. Who made I, Tonya that last year.
And wasn't the Brave one directed by Philip Noyce?
That sounds plausible. He's one of the... No, it's Neil Jordan. Even
Weird.
more. He's a self-blank check, Neil Jordan. Because, things... I mean, obviously, like Interview with the Vampire, but also he got to make his, like, Tony Irish Independence, like, movie off of The Crying Game, and, like... In Dreams is a weird one. The End of the Affair is a classic thrusting situation.
Thrusts.
Where the MPA was like, we'll have this many thrusts, right?
Were you guys surprised in The Crying Game? I remember the
I think I knew the twist.
The moment that
Jay
Davidson?
Jay Davidson came on screen. I was like, that's a guy.
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see it in theaters? Like,
yes. And it was like, but actually, what I did know was like, don't tell anybody the twist.
Right, yes.
So
I feel like Miramax really pushed that.
I was twist spotting for sure.
Yes, you were twist spotting. When you watch it now, it's actually a fascinating movie. It's a great movie.
See, I saw it
but
knowing
you more
the
see it as
twist.
this movie about like queer romance. Like, and it feels that way very early on.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Jay Davidson's really good in that and Stargate, and then is not in any other movie.
Yeah, done. Yeah. Right?
2 and out.
Crazy.
Also, Eastern Promises, great movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sort of a stealth moneymaker. Across the Universe, that's a real blank check movie. If we ever do Tamor.
Yeah.
It's a weird one.
This is that's like a very kind of like auteur-driven September box office.
Yeah, because also opening limited is the Darjeeling Limited.
Yeah.
Opening the Darjeeling Limited. Yeah, you're right. I mean,
this was a weekend before it went Darjeeling wide. Come on, half a point. Half a point.
I'll take them. 10 Darjeeling comedy points.
Fine.
There you go. September. I love September box office games.
So you have your film's coming out end
Your
of August.
film
August
will have
29.
just come out.
This will be almost concurrent.
Yes, this is coming out the Monday after your movie comes out.
Oh, that's exciting.
I know. So
I didn't. You know what? I told myself I wasn't going to plug. I'm not here to plug.
You weren't here to plug.
You're not plugging.
Well, you have
But
a
that
movie.
having been
It's worth
said,
mentioning.
it's very exciting that's
I'd say if
coming
you
out
want-
the Monday that
want
the
to
film
sneak in
opens.
You
this
worked with the great Isaac.
Oscar Isaac.
Oscar Isaac,
I just called
Sir
him
Ben
Isaac.
Kingsley.
Yeah, you worked with Ben Kingsley. Does Ben Kingsley feel weird about having played like multiple like sort of villain? Like he's playing a Nazi here. He's played like resistors of Nazis in past
The
movies.
Mandarin.
He has played all
He did
sides.
play the Mandarin.
The Mandarin, of course.
Right.
Great
We did talk
performance.
about that
Did
a lot
you?
going
Did you
into
really?
it. No.
Damn
No.
it! I wanted you to sit down with him, and he's like, my favorite thing is I ever did.
I really like that performance.
It's a great
it's
performance.
so good.
He was the toast of Croydon.
Who else? Who else we got? We got your Nick Kroll's.
Ooh.
Yeah, Nick Kroll's in it. Nick
is
Kroll, who
great.
feels very. I feel like he wants to do serious. He's in that phase of his career where he's like, I want to do
for
some
sure,
serious stuff.
where he knows he can, and he's sort of got the window.
Joe Alwyn of
Billy
Billy
Lynn.
Lynn.
Billy Lynn fame, yeah.
Yeah.
The
Did you talk
titular
about
Billy Lynn
Billy
himself?
Lynn? That must have been a crazy experience.
We didn't talk about Billy Lynn because
Did-
I'm very jealous of the work of other directors.
Fair enough. You don't
I
want
to talk about other.
Haley Lou
movies.
Richardson, who I feel like is like the
She's so amazing,
brightest
in this
talent
movie.
right now. Yeah,
she's
yeah.
great. Well, she was in a movie that I produced,
Columbus, right?
called
You produced Columbus, which
Right.
is a great movie.
Yeah. Which weirdly was a movie that for me came about because of Twitter. So there are some good things that come from Twitter, which is that
Kogonada's video essays and
I
stuff.
tweeted at Kogonada, and then we sort of got into an email relationship, and then it turned out he wanted to make a movie.
Chris, I don't know if you know, but Ben has a pitch he's been throwing around Hollywood. It's
I got
like
a few of them.
it's like a prequel to The
I got a new
Hangover.
one. No, I got a new one.
Whoa, you got a new one?
Yeah. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So we have this thing on the show where we have pointed out that especially action movies,
Mhm.
the screenwriter will just have them do some kind of thing that
Mhm.
doesn't drive the plot along. It's just like their thing.
Shows that they're buddies, or they got.
Well, like
they
the
got a thing.
example we use is we call it the blender. So in the Will Smith movie,
An
where-
enemy of the state. He keeps on talking about his blender.
and it like
Right.
It's like a
set
character
up-
Right.
quirk that's just to give them a little color, but it doesn't actually factor into the story
Right.
at all.
They're
Yeah.
a real person
Okay,
Yeah.
ish.
so the movie's called Night Eggs.
Okay.
What is this?
I already like that. I do just on the title. you know?
Great. So it's sort of like in the tradition of Die Hard
Mhm.
type action movie, right?
Mhm.
Blue collar guy or just like
Mhm.
regular guy. He's not like
I like it.
Keanu's like franchise where he's like the
John Wick.
John Wick.
He's like a Ben Hosley type.
good call. And
Regular
so
guy. Yeah.
he is just he's gonna have some kind of like 3-day sort of situation. It's like, you know what I mean, very contained terrorist, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You get it.
Mhm.
The reason it's called Night Eggs is
Mhm.
he likes to have breakfast at night. And so there's all these
Yeah,
seeds
yeah.
where he's monologuing and he has like
He's making eggs.
he's making eggs.
I like it.
And they call him Night Eggs. Like it's kind of his nickname because everyone knows he likes to have breakfast at night.
Does he wake up in order to eat in the middle of the night, or does before he goes to bed he makes
keeps
some
late
eggs?
hours.
Yeah. Okay.
So
okay.
he's got-
okay.
But you know what I mean? Like, but when it's like nighttime and it's dinner time.
Is it okay? Does he discover the plot? Does the plot get set in motion because he's making eggs at night, like out of his? Is there a
I feel like,
rear,
yeah, you
rear
need
kitchen
that.
window thing?
Right, because there's like the Die Hard thing where like, oh, the reason he's in the building is because it's his wife's Christmas party. There has to be
Right.
something where like he's awake at a time that no one else is
Mhm.
because that's his breakfast hour.
All right, and he sees a murder.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like Rear Window, but Night Eggs.
Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
good.
Sure.
All right, I think we're cooking with something here.
Do you find out later that the reason he cooks eggs at night is because his father, who was a night watchman, the only way he could really show his love was to give him some of the eggs that he made when he got home from work.
It's called a Hollywood note right there.
That's a really good note.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, so how about
Thank
this?
you. I'll be an executive producer. And,
I'm
going to be taking 10%.
Chris, I'll write a treatment.
Who needs it? Just let's just go straight to script. Shoot.
Where's the big check? Get the big check. Where's the green button? The green button.
Where is it? Does it come out of the ceiling? All right. So I'll write the screenplay and I'll send it along. What do you think? Like, how many pages?
For the treatment?
No, for the screenplay.
Oh, for the screenplay? Well, we probably should have about 2 hours 15, 2 hours and 2.5 hours.
That's what you're thinking,
Yeah.
runtime wise?
This thing's gonna
Because
need
then
room
people
to breathe.
know that it matters. It's an important movie.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh boy.
I mean,
The
this could
Oscar
be a
goes
great.
to
This could
Night
be a
Eggs.
great cooking movie, a great food movie.
That's true. I love a good food movie.
He's
We
always
need,
going to finish his breakfast, right?
Who's going to sing? There should definitely be the song called Night Eggs.
Oh, for sure.
But we should bring somebody back to do that.
Right.
Tina Turner?
Yeah, Tina. Oh, good. Perfect.
Do you know what I
Yes,
miss? I miss it when movie theme songs used to have their own titles, but then parentheses, the theme
The
from
quick-
Night
yeah,
Eggs.
Theme from Night Eggs,
theme,
right, yes.
Theme from Arthur.
Yeah.
Nobody did it better.
Right.
I just parentheses in songs, finishing a thought
Yeah.
is pretty great too.
Yeah. Right. I would do anything for love. Parentheses. But I won't do that.
Yeah.
Before we wrap,
Well, thank you for that.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank
I'm
you.
expecting great things of Night Eggs.
I mean, me too.
Griffin.
Yes.
Gendy Tartakovsky has signed on with Sony Pictures Animation to direct 2 features.
What, did this just come out
Yes.
while we were recording? Okay.
Yes. An R-rated comedy called Fixed. No idea what that is. It'll never happen. And Black Knight, an epic action adventure in the vein of Samurai Jack, which he has written.
Interesting.
There
Now-
was a movie called Black Knight.
That's
With
true.
Martin
And I mean, it's
Lawrence.
unimpeachable. I mean, you couldn't beat
worked,
that one.
So
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
should do it again with the same name.
It's an animated
Didn't
remake.
mean about it, no.
Right.
Well, look, I mean, this is the same thing that happened after Hotel Transylvania 2, where they
That's what I'm
announced 2
saying. Like,
projects and they both...
they've announced he's on board. He's going to do his own movies with us, and we're excited. But who knows? Will it happen?
I'll tell you the thing, because people on Reddit after our episode came out, or Hotel Transylvania mega episode came out, were saying, like, why won't someone let him make a 2D film?
Sure.
Like, if Brad Bird couldn't cash in a check to get that done, like, who's going to get it done? I wish a guy like Gendy Tartakovsky would go to, like, Annapurna.
Sure. Didn't you make, isn't Operation Finale in Annapurna?
It is
as well?
Annapurna, yeah.
See?
I'm jamming
I know my
Annapurna.
stuff.
Because, like, Annapurna made
Yeah,
Sausage
that's
Party, and that
That's
was
true.
because
And it
every
made money.
conventional animation studio was like, we can't do this.
Sure. Right.
Mhm.
And I feel like rather than going to a place with an animation department, he needs to just find a financier.
Well, he's signed on with Sony, so it's not happening.
Suck.
Hmm.
You had a good experience with Annapurna, though?
Very good experience.
They seem cool.
Yeah,
They have a great lineup as well. They have like a lot of fun
they do.
stuff
They make
coming.
classy movies. I think,
Mhm.
like Sausage Party. No, like,
Yeah, because they've got the Barry Jenkins movie this year. They
Right.
have the Adam McKay, Dick Cheney movie this year. They got a lot of.
Did they
fun
make the
stuff.
Jonah Hill movie?
No, that's A24.
That's it, 24. Okay. Well, Operation Finale is playing in theaters now. At the time you're listening to this episode, you're not plugging it. It's not a thing you're plugging. I'm just mentioning that of my own volition.
I appreciate that. I didn't even give you any hand signals or anything.
None at all. And also, Ants is always available to rent on streaming platforms.
Your
It's a
first
very
credit
good
Streaming on
script.
your-
Was that your very first credit?
It was actually
Crazy.
Yeah, that was very lucky for us. Me and my brother.
Hey,
We worked very hard on it.
it's a hell of a screenplay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This
Come
is
back.
really exciting.
Yes.
I will
All right.
tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
No, this is great. It's so much fun to do this. One of my favorite podcasts.
We really
That's, crazy.
cannot believe that
Yeah.
you
Hey.
think that, but thank you for coming.
Yeah, it is very weird every time
Someone likes the show.
Yeah, anyone.
Yep.
I had like one of those yesterday where I was talking to someone. He was like, "Oh, by the way, I've been listening."
Right.
It always feels a little bit like someone has discovered my extramarital affair I'm having when someone tells me, like, I've been lilistening to the show.
You're talking.
Do you
into
feel
the
weirdly
microphone.
ashamed, or
I-
does it make you
sometimes-
lose respect for the person? Where you're like, oh god,
No, it doesn't make me lose respect. It makes me feel ashamed. It does. I'm like, do they know too much about me now?
Sure.
Oh God, what have I said? There's that.
I
sort
worry
of
about
thing.
that. Where I'm like, fuck.
There was,
yeah.
I was listening to sort of just to catch up.
Uh-huh.
You were talking about the was it Sam Gamgee's butthole?
Yeah, he's got
being
stinky
like the
butthole.
eye
It's
of Sauron.
right.
Oh, right. That was a An ad read.
That was an ad read.
Yeah, I'm sure whoever that was
Were they happy
thrilled.
about
Was that
that?
Dollar Shave Club? I think they pulled
That
all
was
their
Dollar
ads
Shave Club.
almost
Yeah, that
immediately.
was Dollar Shave Club.
Yeah.
They
we love you guys.
Canceled the rest of their ads. After that. No, we got paid money for, or rather, I made money for saying that.
Right.
If you break it down, whatever amount of sense I made for saying the brown eye of Sauron.
Right, yeah.
That's
Probably
a thing
like
I do.
$2.
Yeah. No, my
Ben has an adding machine in front of himself, right?
my grandma started like bragging to people about my podcast, like a point of pride, like, oh, my grandson, he's got a podcast. People say it's good.
You're like Ixnay on the Ag Bray.
Well, then I was like, she was like, you have to give me an episode that I can listen to. And I think she thought I was going to like hand her like a 45 that she could like play.
Sure.
But yeah, it was like, what episode won't have something that my grandmother will be terrified or confused by?
Right. Not this one.
No.
Some Spielberg episode,
I think
maybe?
she listened to Broadcast News, maybe.
Yeah,
she
there
also
you go.
keeps complaining that she doesn't have any good photos of me.
I'm sorry.
I said, I'm on a TV show.
That's true. But maybe she doesn't want you in a moth outfit.
Well, tough titties then. Tough titties. And on that note, thank you all for listening.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much for being here, Chris. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe. Thanks to Andrew Good for our social media, Lee Montgomery for our theme song, Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Go to blinkies.reddit.com for some real nerdy shit. And as always, Night X.
Night X, right. Yeah, coming soon.